It's one of the most talked about UFO events in the Phoenix area. 28 years ago, the night of March 16th, these lights hovered over Phoenix for some time. So what were they?
Thousands across Arizona will never forget that night back in 1997. Many say they saw a boomerang-shaped object flying silently through the night sky after 8 p.m.
And I just looked up and something kind of caught my eye, because it seemed just to kind of be floating and just, just a constant speed, but, nothing that I could associate with.
I'm looking off towards the north, and kind of coming in directly at me are these three enormous lights, and they're moving incredibly slow.
We all looked up at the same time and saw this amazing, huge, dark, silent object that appeared to just be right over our heads.
It was awesome. I mean, we were telling ourselves not to blink.
It was very close to the ground. It was just like floating over the housetops.
Flying too slow to stay in the air if it was an aircraft.
Many of the witnesses to the March 13th event described a V formation of 5 lights with 2 lights trailing.
We could not see the whole object from front to back, from side to side. It was so big.
I would gauge this object to be several football fields. I mean, like a mile, maybe more than a mile, maybe even 2 miles. It was huge.
All we could really see was the left wing of the craft as it passed in front of us. And I said to my wife at the time, I said, that's a mile long.
So I'm pretty sure it was a single aircraft, wider than any other aircraft flying today.
Everybody that called me said the same thing. It was huge, it was slow, it was low, it was totally silent.
Everyone described it the same way. It was 5 lights or 7 lights, V or wedge-shaped. It was low. They said very low. It was huge. People said it was mile wide. Some people saw the lights attached to the V-shaped craft.
10,000 people approximately witnessed this, one of the largest experiences of this sort ever recorded.
The Phoenix Lights phenomenon didn't seem to be falsifiable in any way. It was being validated by most everybody that saw it.
No noise whatsoever, and very huge. I got to see the total side view of it, where I got to say that this thing's close to a mile long.
They appeared to be at least a mile wide, probably more.
The evening of March 13th, 1997, people across Arizona and in some other states report seeing a silent, miles-long V-shaped group of lights gliding quietly overhead.
People up in northern Arizona saw lights that were distinctly red.
Major sighting here.
Valley resident Dr. Lynne Kitei saw the lights that evening and has been exploring the phenomenon for decades.
First off, my husband, who was also a physician, and myself had no interest or knowledge of the topic before our first sighting, which was very close to our home, literally and figuratively, right outside our bedroom window. Okay, this is the footage that I took at 10 o'clock on March 13th. They slowly disappeared, and again, the video doesn't do it justice. In real life, they're huge. It was extraordinary.
Oliver and I were flying in. I was flying him to go see his girlfriend. I saw 6 lights over the airport in absolute uniform in a V shape. Now that was the most viewed UFO event. Over 20,000 people saw that.
was a legitimate occurrence of unknown origin craft of some sort, and who knows where it came from, inexplicable, and probably one of the major sightings in modern history in the country, because a lot of people saw it in Maricopa County, and I saw it too.
The most documented, the most witnessed, and the most important mass sighting in modern history.
Na sziasztok! Nagyon nehéz a kamerába beszélni, úgyhogy senki nincs itt, szóval van egy pár jegyzetem. Na mindegy, van egy nagyon jó barátom, aki meg szokta nézni mindig a videóimat, és megkérdeztem tőle, hogy oké, akkor biztos fel vagy iratkozva a csatornára, nem? Aztán mondta, hogy minek iratkozna ő fel, meg hogy miért mondja ezt mindenki a videókban, nem érti ezt az egészet. Aztán mondom, oké, jogos a kérdés. Itt a lényeg, hogy minél több a like, minél több a hozzászólás a videókhoz, és minél többen iratkoznak fel, valamint minél többen osszák meg a videót, annál jobban YouTube-nak az algoritmusa annál jobban teszi ki a videót mások elé is. Tehát amikor mit tudom én, nézed ugye egy videót, és akkor ott van, hogy mások ezt is nézték, vagy nem tudom, hogy van magyarul, ott vannak még kis videók, akkor azokat a videókat dobja fel, ugye, tehát reklámozza, szponzorálja, ugye, amikre ugye folyamatosan hozzászólnak, lájkolnak, megosszák, és tehát az a videó alatt minél többen iratkoznak fel. Na mindegy. Szóval nem könyörgök, de ha ti is azt szeretnétek, hogy minél több emberhez eljusson az információ, akkor abban tudtok legjobban segíteni, hogyha megteszitek valamelyiket, vagy mindegyiket. Végül, ha még nem csatlakoztál a privát Facebook csoportunkhoz, akkor itt az idő, és itt is szeretném megemlíteni, ha már tag vagy, és van akár egy-két ismerősöd, akit esetleg érdekel a téma, akkor nagyon örülnék, ha meghívnád őket a csoportba. Ugyanakkor azt is kérem, hogy légy szíves, ne hívd meg minden ismerősödet, mert próbálom kulturáltan tartani a csoportot, mindenféle gadjulat, kamu posztok nélkül. Gondolom már ti is észrevettétek, hogy az elmúlt egy évben mennyire tele van fake kamu videókkal a Facebook, és rengeteg Facebook csoport is. Nos, nálam én úgy érzem, hogy rend van, és ha nincs forrása a posztnak, meg tehát ilyen gagyi, kamu, ilyen messziről, még rá se kell, hogy kattintsál, már látod, hogy full kamu videó, tehát ilyeneket meglátom, azonnal törlöm. A mai vendégem dr. Lynne Kitei, aki nemzetközileg elismert orvos és egészségnevelő szakember. És a sikeres orvosi karrierjét félretéve a Phoenix Lights, vagy a Phoenix-fények című könyv, ez lesz ez a könyv, illetve a díjnyertes dokumentumfilm és oktatási projektek készítésének szentelte magát. A betegségek korai felismerésének és megelőzésének egyik úttörőjeként a világhírű Arizona Heart Institute képalkotó, megelőző és egészség megőrző központjának vezető klinikai tanácsadójaként dolgozott Phoenixben, Arizonában. 7 év névtelenség után lépett nyilvánosság elé, mint az 1997. március 13-án történt, máig megmagyarázatlan arizóniai tömeges észlelések egyik kulcsfontosságú szemtanúja. Dr. Lynne 1970-ben szerezte meg a természettudományi diplomáját a Temple University-n, Philadelphiában, középiskolai tudományos oktatás szakon, kommunikáció és színház mellékszakokkal. 1974-ben a Temple University orvosi karán szerezte meg orvosi diplomáját, majd posztgraduális tanulmányait a Pennsylvániai Orvosi Főiskolán folytatta. Orvosi képzése előtt dr. Lynne több mint 30 zenés, színházi produkcióban szerepelt, mint fő vagy mellékszereplő. A filmvilágban is feltűnt a 20th Century Fox Coen testvérek sikerfilmjében, a film címét Raising Arizona című filmben Nicolas Cage, Holly Hunter, John Goodman és hasonló színészekkel dolgozott. Orvosi pályája során dr. Lynne ötvözte művészi és tudományos tehetségét, és a közösségi egészségnevelésnek szentelte életét. A TV Guide magazin az orvosi kommunikáció úttörőjeként nevezte, miután 1976-ban létrehozta az NBC Philadelphia számára az innovatív egészségügyi hírműsorokat. Több mint 40 évet szentelt a közegészségügy és az oktatás szolgálatának az NBC és USA Cable csatornák egészségügyi tudósítójaként a 70-es, 80-as és 90-es években. 2004-ben, miután nyilvánosan is előlépett, mint a Phoenix Lights egyik fő tanúja, felvételei és interjúi számtalan rádióban, televízióban és dokumentumfilmben szerepeltek, többek között a következőkben: Coast to Coast AM, Sirius, Thrive, The Life After Death Project, Dun and Croyd Unplugged on UFOs, National Geographic TV, Fox News, NBC, CNN, CW, CBS, Dateline NBC, Unsealed, UFO Hunters, Discovery Science, History és Travel Channel. Producerként, íróként és rendezőként létrehozta a You Make It című egészségügyi és oktatási programot, amelyért számos elismerést kapott. 20 éven át az Arizona Community Foundation támogatásával dolgozott, hogy az egészségmegőrzésre és prevencióra épülő oktatási programjait iskolákhoz, egyházakhoz, ifjúsági szervezetekhez és könyvtárakhoz juttassa el. A programjai közé tartoznak olyanok, mint a Just Say No to AIDS, Just Say No to Drugs, Teen Pregnancy, Children Having Children, Drugs Don't Make It. Ezek a programok ma is világszerte terjesztésben vannak a Discovery Education hálózatán keresztül. Dr. Lynne innovatív és elismert munkássága olyan médiumokban jelent meg, mint a TV Guide magazin, New Dawn magazin, Phoenix Runner magazin, National News Network, UFO magazin, National UFO magazin, Open Minds magazin, LA Times magazin, valamint számos Arizona Republic újságcikkben. Kétszer is bekerült a Who is Who of American Woman kiadványba, és megválasztották Pennsylvania év nőjének. Előadóként és meghívott szakértőként szerepelt többek között a University of Arizona Tucson Medical Center a Harvard professzor Dr. John Mackkel, Bay Area UFO Conference, Hollywood National UFO Conference, MUFON International Symposium, Denver, Cosmic International Conference, Olaszország, ASU Anthropology Museum, ez Arizona State University, CSETI Conference, Puerto Rico, Kanada és Montreal, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, vagy légbázis, MUFON International 2014-15-16, Contact in Desert, Sedona, Oregon UFO Conference, Edinburgh UFO Conference, szóval több száz rádió és televíziós interjúban vett részt világszerte, és az Egyesült Államokban is rendszeresen tart előadásokat és vetítéseket a Phoenix Lights dokumentumfilm és a saját könyve Phoenix Lights kapcsán. Előadásainak és bemutatóinak témája a Phoenix-fényeken túl véletlen vagy kommunikáció. Ezek után nyilvánvaló, hogy Dr. Lynne-t mindenki ismeri, aki számít a placon, például Eric Von Däniken, James Fox, Jim Mars, Jimmy Church, Linda Howe, Nick Pope, Nick Redfern, Paula Harris, Richard Dolan, Robert Salas, Russell Tark, Stanton Friedman, bár ő már elhunyt, Steve Bassett, Travis Walton, és még sorolhatnám. Az időbélyegek megszokottan a leírásban, szóval ha készen állsz, akkor induljon az interjú. Dr. Lynne, welcome. How are you?
I am terrific, and I'm really pleased and honored to be speaking on your program. And you are in Hungary, is that correct, Sabi?
That's right, yes.
Yes, wow. No, I'm thrilled because this really is a worldwide phenomena for centuries, which if we have time we can get into. But the Phoenix Lights have become the most witnessed, the most documented, the most important mass anomalous sighting, UFO sighting, UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena sighting in modern history, if not all of history. And as a key witness, it stayed anonymous for 7 years after thousands of people and we're talking between 10 and 20,000 people, were looking skyward at a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, when they also caught a glimpse of 1 to 8 miles wide, according to Peter Davenport, the head of the National UFO Reporting Center.
Let me play for you what Sue Watson had to say on Jeff Rentz's radio program, and then we'll talk about the altitude that that object was located at above her head. Here we go. And her voice is a little bit accelerated. It's a little higher pitch, but you'll recognize it, I'm sure. Here we go.
I went in and I called the airport and news stations and various people like that and could not get anything, but actually I think it was the airport that gave me Peter's number.
Very good. Okay. Go ahead and tell us about it. Tell us what happened.
Well, actually my children had gone out of the house before I did. We were going to a concert that night, and it was a little bit, maybe 20 minutes after 8, I'm not sure, 8:25 or so. And my daughter came running in and said, Mom, you've got to come out of here right now. We've got something coming over Camelback Mountain, which is a landmark in Phoenix, and we live just a mile below it. So I ran outside. At that time, I had 4 children that were outside with me, and we just watched it. It was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen come over my house, and it came over extremely slow. I mean, it was just kind of coming over this Camelback Mountain, which is, like I say, landmark with lots of housing on the mountain. Mm-hmm. I live in a pretty populated area, so everybody is watching the same thing that we are. And the kids started laying on their backs on the yard. You know,
they laid down.
Oh, a couple of the 2 boys laid down on their backs in the front yard because it was like magnificent. It was lit with this kind of, I don't know how, I told Peter it was almost a yellowish light like they have in parking lots. And it was almost a boomerang shape. And it was a solid vehicle. It wasn't something that was separate.
It was coming right toward your house.
It was coming right at, very low. It was flying extremely low. There was absolutely no sound on it. And there were, I can't remember. I think there were 5 bright lights in front. And actually at one point I saw a laser kind of go down. It was really strange. The kids, we all saw different things. But what we were doing was just basically watching at a very, very slow pace this vehicle just flying over.
What a sight. What a sight that I just...
There you have it. An object that hovered over her home for 5 minutes. Her 2 sons lay down on their backs, as we heard her say yesterday during her fine presentation. It must have been a phenomenal sighting. Let's explore how high this is. Some of you who were here to see her presentation yesterday may recall that during the Q&A, I think I was the last person to pose a question to her, and I invited Sue to hold up her arms and indicate how big this object appeared to her to be. And those of you who were here remember she held up her arms about like that. And I asked her a few weeks ago, in fact on the Jeff Rentz radio program, if she could estimate the angle that her arms formed as she held them up to indicate how big this object was. Our best estimate is that the angle her arms formed was 135 degrees. That is more than a third of a circle. Well, let's use that information to try to calculate what the altitude of that object was and therefore what its size was. We can't do altitude from her data, but in a few moments I'm going to play another audio clip that will give you some idea of how high this object was. Our best estimate, based on a conversation with a U.S. Air Force airman, you'll understand who he was in a moment here, that's about 130, actually simulates 135 degree angle subtended by that object. If we assume that the altitude was 9,000 feet above Sue's head, and that the angle here is 135 degrees, the angle here is 22.5 degrees. I'm sure all of you remember your trigonometry from your junior year in high school, but I'm going to walk you through a few items here. for those of you who are mathematicians or engineers or people who use angles all the time, you will recognize this, but the cotangent of this angle, 22.5 degrees, which is the complement to the angle, half of the angle that Sue was looking at, that she formed with her arms. The cotangent of this angle is the ratio of the length of this side, the adjacent side, divided by the length of the opposite side. Does that all make sense? I'm sure you remember this from your junior year in high school. And we assume that this altitude of the object was 9,000 feet. The cotangent of 22.5 degrees, that is the ratio of this side to this side again, is 2.4142. That is, it's 2.4 times greater than this distance. That tells us that this side, which is 1/2 of the length of the wingspan of that object that hovered over Sue Watson, is 4.115 miles. That's half of the width of that craft. In other words, the object that hovered over Sue's home was about 8.2, perhaps 8.4 terrestrial statute miles. That's how big it was. And just an aside for a moment, if I may, one of the things I'm quite interested in is the strange disappearance of the Malaysian airliner, I think 2 years ago, MH370. I was interviewed by a few people who are interested to know my thoughts on whether the disappearance of that aircraft might have been UFO related. My response was no, I have no reason to believe that. I have no evidence that would support that theory. However, I cited this example to point out to them that there's nothing that prevents one of these craft, by virtue of their size, there's nothing that prevents them from capturing an airliner and stuffing it away in one corner of their ashtray, and they could fly off with it, and they might even be hard put to find that craft. The airliner, it would be so small relative to the overall size of the UFO.
From his data, I mean, we're almost 30 years since the mass sighting on March 13th, 1997, and we've learned so much, and the story continues to evolve. We keep learning new things, and also it's just an amazing sighting that really touched people at a very deep level. We'll get into that as well. But I wanted to show you this particular picture, which is also on the front cover of my book. Those are real. Right? I actually captured 1 month after 9/11, and there's much more to the story than the general public, even seasoned ufologists know aware of. And that's why after 7 years of anonymity, pushed my whole medical career aside, ironically, my life's work has been disseminating the reality of vital health issues on NBC and USA Cable and CBS.
First off, my husband, who was also a physician, and myself had no interest or knowledge of the topic before our first sighting, which was very close to our home, literally and figuratively, right outside our bedroom window. Okay, this is the footage that I took at 10 o'clock on March 13th. They slowly disappeared, and again, the video doesn't do it justice. In real life, they're huge. It was extraordinary, very different than anything we'd ever seen.
Rumors circulated about a cosmic cover-up. The government might be hiding something. Finally, on March 13th, 2000, 3 years after the Phoenix Lights sightings, the National Guard put on an air show to demonstrate that the 1997 Phoenix Lights were in fact Air Force flares and not UFOs. They parachuted down several flares in various V-shaped formations, but many thought the shapes of the flares didn't match up with the lights seen back in 1997. They noticed that many of the flares flickered and moved erratically, as opposed to the 1997 lights, which were much bigger and didn't flicker.
This is a close-up of flares, the flare drop that night. You can see they are definitely not amber orbs, and they do not stay in formation. And this is my video again, quite significant. They stay in a line, they're equidistant from each other.
But when this fell in my lap, I had no interest or knowledge in this at all, Salvi. I mean, I really didn't even, I knew nothing about this. And here, as we'll see, my husband, who's also a healthy skeptic and a physician, and I had a very close sighting to our home. But I wanted to show you this little joke because the Phoenix Lights is not a joke. But for some time, before I came forward, 7 years later in 2004, the Phoenix Lights was other than the people that actually saw it, was made a joke of. And the ridicule and the snickering in the 90s was just rampant. And what's really amazing is that we have stories. I have a book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. It's in its 4th print.
Yeah.
A documentary that's won over a dozen international film festival awards. And also brought in my, oh, yes, thank you. I hope you enjoyed. There is so much in there, and I keep adding. The original book is there, by the way, Savi. They wanted me to do a new book when some of the things started evolving, which we'll get to. But I said, no, you don't understand. I took that 750-page journal 7 years later and squeezed the best of what I found into 230 pages in the original book. And then as the story has unfolded, I've added chapters. So, you know, the original book is there. Every word is there for a reason. But the Phoenix Lights, again, has become so famous worldwide. And I'm doing a study now. If anybody goes, and I hope that they do, to the Phoenix Lights Network website, the Phoenix Lights, www.thephoenixlights.net, and go on not only the photo page, which has my unique collection, but you will see so much more information there. I hope that they, you know, people will go there because there's so much to explore and to consider. But at any rate, it's also seeped into our just our thoughts and our consciousness, as well as the movie industry. Now let's see if I can get this going for you.
Okay. Quick question of the rhetorical variety. That's you, right?
No. What do you mean?
Look at you go. Wow, nice catch. 3,000 pounds, 40 miles an hour. It's not easy. You got mad skills.
That's all on YouTube, though, right? I mean, that's where you found that. Because you know that's all fake. It's all done on a computer. It's like that video. What is
Yeah. Oh, you mean like those UFOs over Phoenix?
Exactly.
Where have we?
Yeah, anyway, that was Spider-Man. They
Yes,
mentioned
yes.
the lights over Phoenix, which was really exciting. I wanted to show, first of all, the topography, if I may, from our vantage point. We live pretty high on a mountain, and we have a panoramic view, lucky enough, of the city skyline. So we know what cars look like, and helicopters and streetlights and so forth, house lights. And our view, can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. What I did in this picture, and we have even a more far-reaching view than this, but this is important because I took a picture of a car on the road. So people could see that the light from the car lights reflects onto the road, very unlike the true unknowns, where the light is self-contained. I call it an orb because the light does not extend outside the edge. So you'll see in subsequent pictures, it's very different than car lights that reflect onto the road. Most lights out there reflect out. To the right of that are skylights here, okay, and at the top of a house.
Yes.
Significant because if you look straight up, you'll see South Mountain, which is just south of the Sky Harbor International Airport. And a few miles back is the Estrella mountain range. Now I'm going to interject a little thing here. I don't believe in coincidence anymore. There's just too many serendipities that have happened, especially since the Phoenix Lights mass sighting, that are just too amazing, I think. And this is one of them. 6 months before the mass sighting, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program at the one school at the Gila Bend Indian Reservation. And this was like K to 12. And it's actually situated in between South Mountain and the Estrella Mountain Range. There's a basin there that's very sacred ground. And after the mass sighting, and in science we look for repeatability, I noticed, and you will notice, that in the pictures, strangely enough, these phenomena kept popping up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I called the principal up, and they don't talk to outsiders, but I helped him out. So I said to him, did anybody see strange lights on March 13th? And he starts to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And he said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. That's the first I ever heard of it. I had no idea that this has been happening not only for centuries, but native cultures worldwide are very open to these phenomena. In fact, the Hopi, Native Americans right here in Arizona, have protocols to invite these phenomena in. And he also said that that's how the Estrellas got its name. It means star in Spanish, gateway to the stars. And there are petroglyphs, which are etched out in the mountains that are very similar to not only what my husband and I saw up close and personal, but what people were seeing March 13th, 1997, during the mass sighting, that are etched out in the mountains. And also, he said that they believe that there is a portal or gateway in that area where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect, which is pretty amazing. But again, I don't know. All I know is I look at the data, and the data speaks for itself. Okay. The other thing he mentioned to me, which I'll just interject here, is the orbs that people are seeing for centuries. Many of the indigenous cultures worldwide, not only are they very open to them, but they believe that they're either spirit world or ancestors coming to give them knowledge and comfort and inspiration. And I have to admit, I would have never chosen this topic, but I certainly have been inspired, and I apologize to your audience. I get very passionate as I go on because it is so fascinating. The story itself, if nothing else, is very fascinating, but I'm the only one with 35 millimeters of these phenomena that I've gone to extreme lengths to have explained to me at university and military level. And not only were they authenticated, but they can't give me an answer to what these things are. Okay, now go back to 1995. Again, no interest or knowledge in these phenomena at all. One wall of our bedroom is a window. So whatever we see or up in the bedroom that pops up out there, whether it's, they call them a haboo, a dust storm, or fire, or planes coming in and out of Sky Harbor, we're very used to all that, we get to see. Now, it also, serendipitously, happened to be the eve of my birthday, February 6, 1995. My birthday is February 7th. I was in an adjacent room taking a leisurely bath. My husband was standing at the window. Now, he was on several state and hospital medical boards. Nothing ever rustled his feathers. And he was on the phone with my mother-in-law from back east. I'm from Philadelphia. We both are, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And she was calling from there to wish me a happy birthday. And suddenly he says, get over here quick. What the hell is that? Very unlike him, right? So I grab a towel, wringing wet, run to the window, dripping, and a little below us. Now, keep in mind that we're very high on a mountain. Our home is nestled in the mountain range. It's gated. There is no way this was military. It's a no-fly zone. And a little below us, and I always go to this sighting, this close sighting in 95, because I saw this up close and personal and experienced this, were 3 amber orbs in a pyramid formation, one on top and 2 very close underneath. And I immediately, coming from a video background, wanted to get my camera, but my video camera, but it was downstairs. So I tried to take everything in mentally. And when you talk to people that have had experiences similar to this, you don't want to move. You're in awe, number one, and you don't know how long it's going to last. So I tried to take everything in mentally. And I urge people to do that periodically when there's something of significance to them, because I looked at the size and the shape and the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each, depending on how close they were. And they were really close. In fact, they were a little below us, okay, over very treacherous desert floor, about 50, 75 feet off the desert floor. And there's cacti and, snakes and all kinds of things there. And it was pitch black. I did look underneath to see if somebody was there, which they shouldn't have been, because it's gated, but nobody was. It was pitch black. And I noticed immediately also that they were oval shaped, which is interesting. I've always said they were like an egg on its side. And I don't know if there's any connection at all. But the Nimitz Navy pilots have come forward to say that they've seen these Tic-Tac or oval-shaped objects. Again, I don't know if they're connected at all, but they were oval-shaped.
The Pentagon says this night vision video was taken by Navy personnel and is being investigated. Unusual sightings like this one continue to occur and be captured on video. Last August, the Pentagon set up the UAP task force to collect and analyze evidence gathered by service members who are now being encouraged to report these strange encounters. We met 2 former Navy pilots, Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich and Commander Dave Fravor. In 2004, they witnessed something shocking, inexplicable, and seemingly out of this world. Did the thought of UFO enter your minds?
It was unidentified, and that's why it was so unsettling to us, because we weren't expecting it, because we couldn't classify it. But what I want to be really careful of here is that we don't jump to conclusions, right? That we don't sensationalize this or...
Little green men?
Little green men or extraterrestrial.
Yeah. You're seeing something that defies explanation.
Right.
Very much.
Yes.
It was November 2004, and the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was training about 100 miles southwest of San Diego. The advanced new radar on a nearby ship, the USS Princeton, had detected what operators called multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in less than a second. Fravor and Dietrich, each with a weapons system officer in the back seat, were ordered to investigate and found an area of whitewater in an otherwise calm blue sea. It appeared to them that an object about the size of a 737 was just under the water.
So, as we're looking at this, her backseater says, "Hey, Skipper, do you?" And about that got out, I said, "Dude, do you see that thing down there?" And we saw this little white Tic-Tac looking object, and it's just kind of moving above the whitewater area.
Do you ever drop your phone and it sort of bounces off the countertop and then bounces off something else, and it's sort of like no predictable movement, no predictable trajectory.
Yeah.
I guess. It was just
like a ping pong ball.
No
just
acceleration.
Very, very random.
Acceleration.
As Dietrich circled above, Fravor went in for a closer look. So you're sort of spiraling down?
Yep. The Tic-Tac's still pointing north-south. It goes and just turns abruptly and starts mirroring me. So as I'm coming down, it starts coming up.
So it's mimicking your moves.
Yeah, it was aware we were there. I want to see how close I can get. So I go like this, and it's climbing still. And when it gets right in front of me, it just disappears.
Disappears?
Disappears. Like gone.
And you saw no visible propulsion,
right.
no wings or anything to make it fly in our atmosphere?
No, actually, when it turned and started coming up, it was kind of like, okay, because we have nothing that goes that fast and just starts climbing at will.
Seconds later, the Princeton reacquired the target 60 miles away.
So in a matter
like that.
Yeah, it just appeared there.
In seconds.
Yeah.
It was 60 miles away. Later, another flight crew encountered what they believed to be the same object and briefly locked onto it with a targeting camera before it zipped off again.
They didn't get a visual on it, but they did get this FLIR
video.
footage, the forward-looking infrared.
So you've got the infrared image
Right.
Yes.
and your eyesight
Yes.
and the Princeton
The radar.
all saying there is something out there.
Yes.
The Princeton had been tracking the anomalous objects for days. Dietrich says they were unarmed.
You know, I felt the vulnerability of not having anything to defend ourselves, to not having any rounds, anything on the rails. If this was, in fact, a hostile threat, and we were engaged, I felt vulnerable, and then I felt confused when it disappeared.
Dietrich says she briefed superiors about what they all saw. In no time, the story of their encounter spread quickly.
Rumors like that spread within seconds. I would say with less than 30 minutes, the entire ship knew this happened.
And what was the reception like?
Actually thought it was kind of funny and started
Yeah.
giving us a lot of grief.
Ridicule.
Yeah.
Ridicule.
Yeah.
Yeah. They made cartoons, and on the ship's TV, they played Men in Black and Independence Day and signs.
So
And,
they made fun of it.
Oh, yeah.
Did anybody take it seriously?
Yeah, I believe the Admiral staff made a few phone calls, but that was the extent of it.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
Echo 61 Tango Project.
Oh, got it! Woohoo!
Roger. There's troubleshooting as soon as I get
Did you box moving target?
602.
No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at that, man. Look at it fly.
And I called them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained and it was a uniform amber color throughout. It didn't glare at all, which was unusual because every other light out there glared. Street lights, car lights, house lights. These did not. They were very soothing, very mesmerizing. And I thought to myself, if I don't get a picture of this, no one's going to believe it. So I go running to the closet to grab my 35 millimeter. I collect sunsets. And if you go on the Phoenix Lights Network website photo page and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see two separate sunsets, which is also unusual because I did not see this when I was taking the sunsets. But in each one, a month apart, in the same exact spot, November and December of 2000, there's a giant rod-shaped object. And actually, people have seen these huge, massive cigar-shaped objects, not only over the superstitions, but Native Americans, Navajo Range, has seen massive rod-shaped, cigar-shaped objects that have these orbs or discs coming out from them. So, but they're there. Okay, they're in the negative, and very strange. But at any rate, so you know, what are we talking about here? Interdimensional stuff. But I'll get to that. So anyway, so I run to get my camera, a cheap Instamatic camera from the closet. My husband calls me back. He says, "Get over here quick. One of them is disappearing." And as we both watched in awe, the top orb, and again, I always go back to this, started to shrink very, very slowly, mechanically, as if there was an intelligent presence behind it. It was just uncanny. getting smaller and smaller. It's difficult to even describe in logical terms, but like almost like a dimmer switch.
Yeah.
But it was like somebody was behind it doing this, okay, until it was pea-size and then disappeared. But it felt like it was still there. Where did it go? There's a sliding glass door perpendicular to the big picture window. I step out onto the balcony, get a quick picture of the two lower orbs, which right here, if you look down here, are the two lower orbs, and immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. And I have to admit, which I did not tell a soul until 2 years later, and I haven't, it's just recently that I'm even sharing this with the public, but because it seems so absurd, but going through my mind, because as intently as I was watching these two lower orbs, it felt like something was watching me. It just did, just like I'm looking at you right now. And going through my mind, I'm thinking, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. The next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to shrink, and I immediately shot a picture of that. This picture was the only one that turned out at the time. But for me, because we're talking strips of 35 millimeter, which is also really important because these are in the negative. They can't be fudged, okay? But you can see one, which is miraculous that I happened to catch this with a cheap Canon Instamatic camera. You can see one half disappeared and one is still there. But I didn't even know who to show it to. Okay, now I'll put this on hold. And real quick, I will go back to the first picture. It wasn't until 3 years later, a year after the mass sighting, and we have video in our documentary to show this, there was another unbelievable sighting through a fog. And I had alerted the videographers, which serendipitously were situated north, south, east, and west, that I had seen the lights come back after the mass sighting in 97. And this is January of 98. At a distance to be on the ready the third night. And we all caught straight lines, mirror images of these lights. And the final thing was a pyramid of 3 lights. And now we had 4 different videos from 4 different vantage points at the same time, which we did not have on March 13th. That's important to note because we all took video, a handful of us at different times. Before 10 o'clock, my video and an Arrowhead video. After 10 o'clock, there were 2 boomerang videos, and we'll get to those. But here we had 4 videos at the same time. And I'll try to get through this quickly, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I had met with Linda Moulton Howell. I don't know if you know that name.
Yes.
She's huge in the field, and very few people knew what I had. I really stayed anonymous for 7 years, but I wanted my data before I would ever come forward, which I did not want to come forward, analyzed. And she had recommended that I send my pictures to Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who was just passed recently, unfortunately, very respected Navy optical physicist. So I sent the videos from the 4 of us. And as an afterthought, and by then, this was a year after the mass sighting, I had gone back, I had gone back to the strips and found that I had this picture plus the one, the negative that's attached to the last picture here. The only thing in that negative are the true unknowns. There's no city lights or house lights or anything. It's very bizarre. But anyway, going back to this first picture, I get a call from Dr. Maccabee a couple weeks later, and she says, you told me that close sighting you had with your husband was about 2-3 minutes. I said, right. He said, are you sure? I said, that's what I remember. He said, ask your husband to corroborate. Interestingly, everybody comes from a different background, a different upbringing, different belief system. Some people can't deal with this topic, and some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. But now there's data if people actually want to look at it. But he didn't want to hear about it. I mean, he would get agitated when I brought it up, which was strange to me because to me it was wondrous and amazing. And, oh my goodness, I even caught a picture of it, right?
Yeah.
But I sat him down. This is 3 years after the closed sighting, and I said, "Look, we don't have to talk about the sighting, but how long do you remember it being?" I don't know. He said 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. I go back to Dr. Maccabee and tell him, he said, "That's impossible." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "First of all," and he was the first to notice it, if you see the 4 lights on top of the city skyline there,
Yeah.
there's a pointer, okay? I thought that it was just part of the landscape. They are disappearing. Now there's 2, okay? They are disappearing while the close orbs are disappearing. If you look at my other pictures, it's the same exact phenomena in the same exact location, 2 years before the mass sighting.
Yeah.
And these pictures are really important to show that they were there in 95. And you'll see 2 months before the mass sighting in a minute. But he said, but that's not the most important thing. He said, look at the skyline. Oh, and the other thing he noticed is that these moved, the lights actually moved from the left side of these skylights, right, to the right side of the skylights. See that?
Yes.
So they moved.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he said, but the most important thing is the skyline itself. He said there are many lights on it. He was very meticulous. His 21-page report is on the website, Phoenix Lights Network website, if anybody wants to read it. But he said there are groups of lights, not just individual lights, but groups of lights that are on in the first picture that are off in the last picture. And he was very meticulous, and he drew lines from the top picture. You know, he put them on top of each other, and this is all in the report. He said that doesn't happen in a couple of minutes. He said, I want you to do an experiment. He said, go out on the balcony, and mind you, this is 3 years later. But he said, stand approximately where you were standing in 95. Take a picture of the skyline one night every hour, the next night every half hour, the next night I took them every 15 minutes. He said to see when these groups of lights go out. Now, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8 when we're home. So let's be conservative and say the starting point is 8 o'clock. The lights start going out at 9. And the last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. So he says to me, can I present this case at the upcoming MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, International Symposium in Washington, D.C., coming up, 1999. And I said, hey, Dr. Maccabee, this is your baby. I would have never noticed this data, but please keep my name out of it. And I was very fortunate because there were a handful of people, the head of the optical science department at the University of Arizona, who took great interest. He worked on the Star Wars with Reagan, okay? And he took great interest in my photographs, as well as the dean of students at Brooks Institute of Photography and others. And, you know, now Dr. Bruce Maccabee. So I was really fortunate. I said, just keep my name out of it. He presented it in 1999 at the International UFO MUFON Symposium in Washington, D.C. as the only, and as far as we know, the only, to this date, authenticated photographic evidence of missing time, that there were hours in between the first and the last picture, not just minutes. So anybody that wants to, not just a little aside, but, you know, I don't know what happened. What I shared with you is what I remember. And, you know, all I say is, I don't know what these things are, but I know that they are. And that it's time we get this topic out in the open and we address it and we accept it.
Yes, Dr. Lynne, sorry to interrupt, but yes, there are several other cases that I'm aware of personally, that when there is this eerie silence and you might don't know, but yes, you actually have evidence that there was a missing time. So he calculated about 2 hours, you said, 2.5?
At least 2 hours, because then he did it again a few years ago for National Geographic with better software than 98. And there were more lights that were on in the first picture that were off in the last picture. So it might even have been longer. But nonetheless, something you know, I mean, I told you what happened, so I don't know. And it's very strange that the picture next to this one, attached to this one, the only lights are the two unknowns in the whole picture. It's like really strange. So I don't know. That's the data. I deal with the data. Now, fast forward 2 years later, not seeing anything in the sky. And trust me, when we were in our bedroom, I did look out the window to see if they would come back, because I was told that this was the only picture that turned out at the time, right? And, you know, okay, I wanted to see if I, you know, could see them again. Well, I'm lying in bed. This is January of 97, 2 months before the mass sighting. And I noticed that there are 3 huge amber balls of light far west that are in a line formation, equidistant from each other. And I'm thinking, okay, while I'm looking, I'm thinking they're at a distance, but they're huge and they're amber and they're in an equidistant line formation. And I watched as each one seemed to implode and shrink from right to left. And I'm thinking, wow, strangely similar to 95, right? I mentioned it to my husband and he says, do I still have to go to work tomorrow? Okay, that was his comment. The next night, he was in a medical board meeting. I come upstairs and like I said, when something pops up out there, we usually get to see it. And I notice out of the sliding glass doors that now those same 3 huge amber orbs in an equidistant line are far south. And they were in front of South Mountain because there are red blinking lights on top of the mountain to alert aircraft coming into Sky Harbor that's right in front of South Mountain that there's a mountain there, right? So they don't crash into it. And they were lower than the lights. So I said, enough. I grab my video camera. I get about 18 seconds worth. Battery goes dead and it was charged. And I go in and I plug in the battery. I go outside, they're gone. Now, another little coincidence, which was a good one, was that on video, it doesn't do the lights justice. They're much smaller, they're white, they flicker. Even though if you study them, the formations themselves are very compelling, okay? So at any rate, about a half hour later, my husband comes up the drive and I go outside and I said, honey, remember when I told you about those 3 amber orbs in a line formation last night, far west? Well, about a half an hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain. As I'm pointing like this, they reappear in the same spot. It was like, whoa, I gotta get a picture of this. So I run upstairs, I grab my 35 millimeter, I get out on the balcony. As I'm ready to shoot the 3, suddenly 6 lights across, massive span, over a mile wide, pop up above the 3. This is the first picture, and it's wavy because I was shaking. Not having an explanation for 95. It was like, whoa, what is that? Going through my head, it was like a fleet or mothership. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, it was just so bizarre. But thank goodness I kept my wits about me, because the second picture to me is a smoking gun. Because if you look at this picture, again, this is in the negative, okay? It looks like there's a V on top, bright light in the center with 2 on each side, with 2 lights underneath. Well, 2 months later, during the mass sighting, thousands of people would describe what they saw as 5 lights in a V formation with 2 trailing lights. Okay.
Yes.
Then, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there are
No, interrupt anytime.
Sorry, but there are actually plenty of other cases where a large UFO has 2 small orbs around the main craft.
There you go. And as the orbs on the bottom start to disappear, now there's only 1, it looked like the top formation was turning into a V. And this last picture is interesting because every other one, and again, these have all been analyzed by university military optical experts, and they can't give me an answer to what these are. Plus, it gets even better because each one is larger than the one in between. So we can postulate that either these lights are attached to something that's translucent, because the larger lights are the closer arm and the in-between lights are the further away arm, or there's a force field in between. But I did not sleep well that night. In fact, as the lights were disappearing from underneath, I ran inside, called the Arizona Republic newspaper, which is a big newspaper here. And I said, you got to get somebody out there quick. There's strange lights in front of South Mountain. Get somebody to take pictures and tell me what it is. By the time I finished my sentence, they were gone. So anyway, the next morning I woke up, the first call I made was to the Arizona Republic. And I said, did anybody call last night to report strange lights in front of South Mountain? The operator gets off, she gets right back on. She said, nope, nobody called. Well, I know I called. So I said, well, my husband and I did see something strange. I'm sure there's a logical explanation. I'm just trying to seek out what that might be. She says, well, sometimes Luke Air Force Base sends experimental maneuvers out and they don't tell the public about it. Okay, that sounds reasonable. So I call Luke Air Force Base, try to be very professional. My husband and I are both physicians. We live mountainside in Paradise Valley, and we saw some strange lights last night in front of South Mountain. Could you tell me what they might have been? And from the get-go, she had an attitude. And she said, well, they didn't come in from here and they didn't come out from here, so we had nothing to do with them. I said, well, be that as it may, we did see something strange. I even got pictures of it. I'm sure there's a logical explanation. How can I find out? She said, well, you said that it was close to the airport, so maybe they saw something there. Ha. Now it was a mission, which was very unlike me, by the way. And I called up the FAA, try to be very professional. My husband and I, as physicians, we live outside in Paradise Valley. We saw some strange lights in front of South Mountain last night. She says, actually, there was a group of air traffic. I'm sure there was a buzz, okay, the next morning, because she said there were a group of air traffic controllers here last night that did see something strange. I said, whoa. I said, and by the way, it was over the tarmac, okay, Class B restricted airspace. There's a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport. Anyone that comes into that airspace must call into the tower, okay? So I said, well, wait a minute. Is anybody there this morning that saw it last night? She said, let me check. Kept me hanging forever. Finally, this fella gets on. And we had which is in my book, a briefing at Village Labs, which is a color lab that was analyzing these things too. A few weeks later, and he was a really low-key guy. He gets on the phone. He was more excited than me in this hobby. He said, did you see the lights that were equidistant from each other offering information last night at 8:30? I said, yes, I'm at a distance. He said, well, actually, there were 3 at 8 o'clock. I said, I saw them too. I mean, he was so excited that I had seen something from far away as well. He said, because first the 3 popped up over Class B restricted airspace. Like I said, anyone in that airspace, especially 1,000 feet altitude that these were, must call into the tower, and no one did. So they got nervous. They looked on radar, did not show up on radar, and then they disappeared. About 8:30, when the 6 popped up, they got really nervous because it was huge over the tarmac. And they looked on radar, did not show up on radar. They took their binoculars to look, and in his own words, he said there were 6 points of light totally equidistant from each other, massive span, over a mile wide, that seemed to be attached to something, but they couldn't quite see what these lights were attached to or had a force field holding them in rock solid formation. And he was a meteorologist. That was another lucky break because he was a climatologist and a meteorologist. He said the entire thing turned as a unit against the wind, elevated slowly, and moved in synchrony, as he put it, behind South Mountain. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then he said, beats me. I said, you're air traffic control. You're supposed to know it's in our airspace. He said that the whole group ruled out every conventional aircraft, balloons, Chinese lanterns, flares, even skydivers with lights. And they had no idea what these were. Okay. They were just as curious as I was. Okay. Yeah. Well, we kept in contact up until and including March 13th, 1997. When thousands of people, I mean, this is really important too. Do you have any questions so far?
Sorry. Yeah, no, that's fine. Just carry on.
We're
yes.
Good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm to be honest, I'm aware of the whole everything, but it's for the Hungarian audience mainly. So just carry on.
Right, exactly. I don't know if they know, and no. I want to make sure that they get the high points.
Yes, okay. Please. Yeah.
Okay. So now 2 months later, March 13th, 1997, I continued seeing these lights, by the way, and photographing them. The scientists in me, I had to go out when they showed up. In fact, another little aside, my husband was getting annoyed because I kept jumping out of the bedroom and going out of the balcony. And, you'd say, oh, somebody's on the mountain with fire or something, right? Yeah. And I really tried to think of what these could be. I really tried to rule out any logical explanation as well. But it was getting a little ridiculous. So I knew no one that was connected to this topic at all. Mm-hmm. So this is how close I was, Sabi. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. And I had never heard of it at that point. So I call him up and I said, I'm seeing these lights. And he hadn't heard about it, but there were other people that were seeing them along with me and photographing them. In fact, one of them called up MUFON to their balcony the night of the mass sighting, and they caught this giant V, like an arrowhead of 5 lights. It's really a great video. And I said, and I have a picture, and that was the only one I had at the time, from 95 of a close sighting that I would like someone of credence to take a look at. He refers me to a field investigator for the following Wednesday, who called me on Tuesday to say the then state director who wanted to be there of MUFON's mother had passed on Saturday. The funeral was Wednesday morning. Could we postpone? And I said, well, I am so busy for another 2-3 weeks. The only window of opportunity I have is Friday morning. He said, great. Okay. I knock on his door. He opens the door. The first thing he says to me is, did you see the mass sighting last night? I said, well, I saw something very similar to what I saw 2 months ago that I told you about. In fact, it was so similar that I called air traffic controllers this morning to see if it was, and they confirmed that it was the same exact phenomena over the same exact location, 1,000 feet altitude over Class B restricted airspace. In fact, I have video from last night. He says, great, because NBC was coming to interview him in a half an hour. I said, whoa, I said, first of all, I used to do health reporting for NBC in Philadelphia in '76, and then a syndication was showing here at CBS. And then in the early '80s, I worked with NBC here doing health reporting as well. I said, somebody might recognize me. I don't know what we're dealing with here. I don't know if it's a hoax or military or whatever, but it's not about me. And Savi, it's never been about me. It's about the data. I said, you know what? Take a copy of the video, let people see what we saw. I don't know what it was, but they can at least saw what we saw. I'm out of here. Share it with whoever you want to. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, I didn't know if anybody would be covering it. I turned on the TV. My video was plastered on every news station. He gave it to everyone.
Some NASA insiders about the mysterious lights over Phoenix on March 13th. Among the wild theories that abound, another one tonight to shock the imagination. Again, some NASA insiders are claiming that the lights could be from another galaxy. Jim Schneebelt shares the cosmic theory with us.
It's been 4 months since the well-publicized UFO sighting over Phoenix. Since then, more sightings, some in the daytime, and people are still looking for answers.
The entire world is watching Arizona right now since it's the UFO hotspot. They're watching what happens next, and so are we.
Some believe the lights were flares, some believe they were a secret military aircraft, and others believe they were spaceships. But now a new theory emerges concerning the origins of the mysterious lights over Phoenix. It's a theory that supposedly our own government has knowledge of, and it's a theory of mysterious balls of light visiting Earth from distant galaxies.
I think it's very interesting that NASA personnel have the courage to circulate documents like this.
Delatoso claims he was paid a visit by the real Men in Black, men affiliated with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and NASA. The space agency may be interested in UFOs because of recent UFO sightings from the space shuttle. This video of UFOs is from STS-80, a shuttle flight last December. The flashes are lightning over Africa, and you can see an occasional meteor whiz by. But soon, strange balls of light appear, entering the Earth's atmosphere. And other shuttle missions have made similar sightings. Could these be similar to the balls of light seen over Phoenix?
So this gentleman comes to visit me one day, has a badge on with just his picture and a logo from a local government contractor that I recognized, and says, I have these for you.
He allegedly gives Delatoso 2 technical documents on hyperdimensional travel written by one of NASA's top scientists. The papers describe how in quantum theory it would be possible to generate balls of light in a distant galaxy and send them hurtling toward Earth faster than the speed of light, using tiny black holes and the forces of gravity. It's the stuff Einstein theorized about.
Now we're sitting here in Phoenix, Arizona, trying to decide if it's flares, and we have NASA in a select group inside of NASA theorizing that it is a collective consciousness transfer of extraterrestrials.
And it was exciting, I have to admit. I mean, after seeing these things for 2 years, I didn't know what they were, but now I'm learning that thousands of people were not only outside looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet, which is very clear on March 13th, 1997 in the northwest sky, but they also caught a glimpse of 1 mile to 8 miles wide, according to Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington. He disclosed at the 20th anniversary, we had a big conference in Oregon, and he announces that one of these objects was 8 miles wide. I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
Of either these orbs, these balls of light that seem to be attached to something, as the air traffic controllers would say, or at a force field holding them in rock solid formation of V formations, triangle formations, boomerang formations, or actual craft. And we will get to that. Now, first of all, this is a shot from the video of what I captured that night, of a massive, massive formation, equidistant from each other, of the endpoints of a V or triangle. And again, I called the air traffic controllers the next morning and I said, I videotaped something last night that looked like the same exact thing as 2 months ago, and they confirmed that it was, and that it turned, okay? And they also shared with me that there were 2 pilots that called in during the mass sighting. One commercial pilot, airline pilot, said, "What the hell are these lights over me?" We're talking right over the tarmac as he was on departure. And a private pilot, didn't say what his name was, which we'll learn later, on close approach, was describing the same thing that I was shooting at the same time. Okay. Well, here I'm learning that thousands of people saw what I had been seeing. I didn't know what to do, to be honest. I mean, what do you do with this? Okay.
Yeah.
And I did not want to get involved with the media at all. I just wanted to find out what the heck it was. Okay. The following week, on Tuesday, now this was a Thursday night, was a mass sighting. The following Tuesday, and the news stations kept showing my video. I see my video again on the news. And they're interviewing a fella who is the head of Village Labs, which was in Tempe near Arizona State University, who is showing, because on the side, besides being a big computer lab, on the side, he would analyze pictures from all over the world, from Belgium and Russia and UK, of the same exact phenomena of these orbs in triangle formation. Have you ever seen them in Hungary?
Triangle formation, not aware, but I am aware of like a size of a football field. The way they explained actually these were police officers that they said it was in the 92 actually, but yeah, they said that was like it looked like a football field, at least like a football field.
A hiteles szemtanú nagyon fontos. Amikor azt mondtam, hogy szilárd meggyőződésébe vált, az a rendőrségi anyag, amely Siófokon volt, és váltak a poligráf vizsgálatot. És akkor nyilatkoztam a tévének, hogy amennyiben ők nem lesznek hitelesek a poligráf szerint, akkor abba hagyom a nyomozást, a kutatást, de minden szó, mint kiderült a poligráf vizsgálatból, igaz volt. Na, innentől kezdve merem azt mondani, hogy a szilárd meggyőződésem és a további munkámnak ez az alapja.
Amikor felnéztünk az égre közösen, le voltunk döbbenve szinte, egy futballpálya méretű, hatalmas nagy repülő tárgy volt, 8-10 fehér kör alakú ablaknyílással.
Komolyabban kéne foglalkozni ezeket a dolgokkal. Ne kelljen vizsgálatokra járni, hogy az ember az igazat itt bizonyítsa be. Ezt én nem tartom korrekt dolognak egyébként. Valami iszonyú közelségről láttunk egy olyan repülőtárgyat, ami hát valami félelmetes volt.
Pillanatra megdermedtem, mert ehhez foghatót nem láttam még. Nagyon teljesen felettünk repült át, és hangtalanul. Tehát ez biztos, hogy nem földi eredetű.
Anybody get pictures?
No,
Did anybody get pictures?
they didn't have.
No?
But
Okay.
I know
mean, that's the thing. Go ahead.
I know there is Colin Summers, I think his name. He has collected, like he's British. He collected, I think, 130 of these V-shaped or boomerang-shaped objects just in the UK.
Okay, so Colin Saunders. Right, welcome. You're going to tell us about the sighting and a bit more about the incident.
Right, my name's Colin Saunders, and like I say, a couple of you know me from the last time I was here. Briefly, I spent a lot of time in the aircraft industry, working for Saab in Sweden and for Messerschmitt in Germany. I've also spent a bit of time working for Chevron in the North Sea, so flown on quite a few helicopters, so quite a lot of aviation experience, if you like. Now, 6 months ago, we had an experience. We'd never had one before, and there was 4 members of the family that it happened to. Victoria was with me tonight, a mother and a grandmother. We'd been out for a family meal to a little village called Paleton. We were coming back along the fosse. We just turned onto the fosse from a country road. And at this point, we started to see some flashing lights down in front of us.
We were on the way home from Las Vegas, about a half mile from where we're standing at the moment.
I just happened to look out the rear view mirror and just saw something coming up from behind us. And it looked like it wasn't
normal.
And I kept saying, what the hell is that?
And this thing floated above our heads, doing about 30 miles an hour.
That's a good word, float. Yeah.
Floated, yeah, it floated. Or had to have been defying gravity, or it was a lighter than aircraft. I don't know. But it was triangular. It was monstrous. The moon and the stars went away, and there it was above us. And we stood and watched it go across the valley and head toward the mountains.
My name is Rosita Dixon, and I'm 75 years old. I have been living here in Hamilton for the last 42 years, but before that, I lived in Puerto Rico. And while I was there, it was in 1971, I was coming home from the movies with my mom, and it was a beautiful night. I left my mother at the entrance of the house, and I went to park the car in the garage, and when I came back, I was looking at the sky. It was so beautiful. And all of a sudden, I noticed, there it is, just sitting there in the sky was this triangular object. And it was just, I could see the tree, the lights of the street reflected on. So it was above the tree line, just above my house. And I couldn't understand what it was because it didn't move. It was just standing there. It was not hovering. It was nothing. It was just there. And there was no noise, absolute quiet. And all of a sudden, I'm very scared. And I'm looking at it, and like I said, there was no markings. Obviously, that rectangular shape was a spaceship of some kind. There were no markings on it, except at the top. There were little arches of like blue light coming out. Obviously, windows were around the triangular shape that I could see because it was so low. All of a sudden, it went boom to the right, and it just disappeared. I was speechless. I ran upstairs, and I told my mother, I wish you had stayed down there with me so you could have seen it. So she said, well, let's call the airport and see if there's any airplanes or anything going on, because we were close to where the airplanes came into Isla Verde Airport. And I called, and I talked to somebody in the tower, and he said nothing has been in and out of the airport in the last 15 minutes, but please give me your address and your phone number so we can reach you and talk about this some more. And I did. And about 3 days later, I got from the U.S. government, big manila envelope, this many papers in it. It was a questionnaire, a very detailed questionnaire about what I had seen. Could I identify the shape? Which I could. It was there. There were no pictures of it, but there was a drawing of it. And they had cigar shapes and round ones and all kinds of different shapes. Triangular, it was there. So I was supposed to describe my experience in a lot of detail because it was many, many pages. I filled it out right away, sent it back, and never heard from them again. And that's a story that I tell all the time. Sometimes people laugh at me, but I don't care. I saw what I saw, and it's not going to change me. That's what I saw.
And then it was heading straight north.
Las Vegas journalist Caitlin White was in the backyard of her southeast Las Vegas home last year when she saw a dark behemoth fly over. She drew this picture.
It was triangular shaped, and there were rectangular reflectors. There was no interior light coming out of it at all. And by the time it got out of sight, I bet it was 5 to 8 minutes. It was really slow, and I couldn't figure out how it was staying in the air.
White called the police, who connected her to Nellis Air Force Base, which is the direction the triangle seemed headed.
And the man said, I don't want you to talk about this anymore. You're not going to talk about this anymore, and you're going to forget it. And once again, I said, look, Betty, I'm not drinking. I'm not on drugs. Something is headed for your base. And then he got really terse and he said, ma'am, I'm going to tell you one more time, and this is the last time I'm going to tell you, you will forget what you saw and you won't tell anybody. And at that point, I was freaked. I didn't know what to do.
I noticed a yellowy orangey light just to my side then. I thought, oh, there's no street light out there. I thought it was a street light at first, so I sort of did a double take, and I saw 3 orangey yellow lights, and they were sort of moving in towards each other. These lights sort of moved in and until they disappeared, and then they seemed to be replaced by just random dots of light, which were sort of moving. So I would imagine that they were all on a huge craft that was actually turning, and then these lights were coming towards me, and as it come towards me and it took shape, it was a triangle, a big huge triangle with the lights all the way around the edge, and it went over my flat, and it ended up me out of my flat window with my mobile phone trying to get a photograph of the thing.
Were the lights just along the sides or were they on the corners? Just
I'd say no more than 8 on each side.
Right, okay.
I think there were fewer on the back side of it. And there was one red one in the centre.
One red one in the centre.
Yeah. 3 white lights with a red flashing light. But what struck me most was it seemed to be still. It seemed to be completely still. It was like maybe 4 to 5 houses high, if you get me. But what I noticed is it was sort of rotating like that. That's why these lights look. That's why these lights looked like they were going into each other, but they weren't, because they were like a solid object.
I looked up first and I saw this massive, great big black triangle sitting in there, and it wasn't. It seemed to be absorbing the light. You could see it against the light pollution. This thing, the size of it is massive, like a great big football field.
So it was blacker than the surrounding sky.
It was blacker than the sky.
Right.
That's how we could see it.
And give me an estimate of size, Dean.
Well, it must have been like bigger than a football field.
It must have been at least a football field in size. It was huge. The height, I think, was about 3 or 4 houses high.
Right.
Heading towards north-northwest from south-southeast.
Right. And then it kind of moved backwards towards me, if you know what I mean. But like really slow and smooth, and that's why I knew that's not an aeroplane, if you know what I mean. It was like really slow and smooth, like backwards like that, and then it moved forwards like that way, and then it sort of just did that a few times and then just headed off.
Right. But there were no sound at all. That's what was weird.
The craft was going like that,
right,
and turning round. Eventually those lights on the back disappeared, and I could just see it like a cluster of lights. And the cluster of lights were moving, and then they all started coming towards me like that. And as it got closer and started going above, I could see then it was a triangle.
It was absolutely massive, this thing. It had a white point of light. At each point there was a white piercing light, and in the centre was a small cluster of red and orange, like honeycomb arrangement of lights at the centre. It's just sitting there. I didn't see it move.
Nothing holding it up.
Nothing holding it up. I was looking. Yeah,
Did you hear any noise from it?
No. I mean, if there was a noise, I probably couldn't hear it because of the engine.
1 o'clock in the morning, I took the dog out into the garden for his last roll around. Far off in the distance, I could see lights flashing. I thought it was a helicopter because of the speed it was travelling at. But the lights were not as a helicopter normally is. They weren't strobing, but it made no sound. And I'm thinking, well, what the hell is this? And this one leading light with the 2 following, and it didn't split up. It was just one. It appeared to be just one solid object. And of course it just didn't make a sound, so I couldn't place it.
What sort of speed do you think it was travelling at?
40 miles an hour? It wasn't fast.
Eerily, it looked just like an object spotted over Belgium in 1990, which so spooked authorities that F-16 fighter jets were scrambled to intercept it. That were in 1990, and they've put a picture of that one as well, which looks pretty much dead on what I saw, to be honest.
Right.
This object was coming over the top of the houses,
And I could see the red lights were starting at the front of the object and flashing down the sides of the object. So I was initially, this was a head-on view, and clearly wasn't anything that I could recognise.
Right.
So as it drew closer, I could make out it was a flat triangular shape.
It just maintained the same speed, it didn't alter, but looking at it from underneath, I was seeing a light there, is that in frame? A light there and a light there. About 3/4 football pitch.
Right. All right. Okay. So
is a rough.
Pretty big then.
Yes,
yeah,
it was
all right.
pretty big.
And what I was seeing was red lights flashing sequentially down the craft from the front to the back, the full length of the object, say about 10 lights. And again, as it started coming closer, I was now more looking side on. And the height of this thing was probably around 500 meters, I'm guessing. So not very high at all, but certainly high enough above the houses. But as the first object came into closer and came side on, a second object, identical to the first one, appeared underneath it.
That makes, for me, 100% certain that this is not a man-made object.
Or between 10 o'clock and 10:30, and I was coming down the dual carriageway from a place called Goodrich, which is about a mile outside of Monmouth, or 2 miles. And as I came up to the traffic lights on the dual carriageway, kind of parallel to the centre of town in Monmouth, I noticed these two balls of light, what looked like two balls of light, hovering above the trees just to the right of the motorway. Maybe 40 metres away from me, because they were to the right of the motorway and just above some trees that are in Chippenham Park, which is right next to the motorway. So they were set back a little from the motorway and above these trees in the park. So I was looking at them while the traffic lights were red, and the traffic lights turned green. So I headed down the motorway, and I started to wind down my window so I could get a bit better look at these things. So as I drove past them with the window wound down, I was literally looking straight across the dual carriageway at these balls of light hovering above the trees. They were a matter of meters above the trees, maybe 5 meters. And they were two balls of light. One of them was below the other and slightly smaller than the other. So they were both roughly basketball size. I think the larger one was slightly larger than a basketball, and then the smaller one below it was maybe the size of a football or a little smaller than that, so about 2/3 the size of the one above it. And the smaller one had a large spike sticking out the right hand side of it. I mean, seeing these two balls of light is bizarre enough, but seeing the spike coming out of one side of it, and it was kind of protruding out of one side, a sharp spike. Both balls of light appeared to be kind of fizzing as if they were unstable, and I actually wanted to get a bit of distance from them. So I carried on driving while I was looking at this spike coming out one side. It looked like it was actually growing out, like it was extending in length a little bit. But I didn't kind of stop there to find out what was going on, because I didn't feel all that safe. So I carried on driving up to the slip road, pulled into the slip road, got out of the car, turned back to look at these balls of light, and now there were no longer two balls of light in there where they were. They were two large black triangles, and they were right next to each other, except that one was set back slightly from the other as if they were in a staggered formation. And they were literally in exactly the same place where I'd seen the balls of light 10 seconds earlier. It must have taken me about 10 seconds to drive the car to the slip road and pull over and get out, maybe 15 seconds.
Can you give an estimate of size of these triangles?
Yeah, in the way I explained them on the night when I got home and wrote it all down, was that they were the size of each triangle was roughly the size of the roof of the petrol garage at the bottom end of Monmouth. Right. And that petrol garage has got 12 pumps. So you can imagine 12 cars parked underneath roughly each triangle. You know, if you'd squeeze all the cars together, you could fit about 12. And they were kind of dark grey, not really black. You know, you look at the stealth aircraft and that sort of thing. You look at the B-2 stealth bomber, even in daylight, in some of those air shows that you can look at on YouTube. It's like pitch black. These things were more slightly grey, so a very
dark grey, but not totally black.
Can you remember any lighting on them at all?
So if you imagine that this was actually a triangular shape, and this is the back end, and the triangle point would be at the front end. If this is the back end of the triangles, there were 4, and they were obviously flat like this as they went along. There were 4 blue oblong-shaped lights along the back end in a row, and they were quite fat and quite prominent. And I could see they actually bulged out. Just there was a bulge to them. They weren't kind of inset. They were bulging out, and they were turquoise blue and quite large compared to all the other lights, which were spread over the rest of the bottom, the underside of the triangle, and there were about 10 other lights of different colours but in a pattern. So if there was a green light on one side, there'd be another one opposite it on the other side. So it was symmetrical layout of lights, but lots of different colours. So I'm thinking they were kind of yellow, definitely white. There was a white light on each point, but there were also on the other side yellow, red, green, and these blue ones is what I'm thinking. But the layout of the lights underneath was quite complex, so I don't remember the exact layout, even though I drew it a rough estimation of what it was in my Photoshop recreation that I did on my computer the night it happened. But the one that I remember, the lights that I remember, were 4 oblong shaped lights along the back end, which were very distinctive. And then as both of the triangles crossed over the motorway and they turned their back ends towards me, all of the lights changed to a white colour. All of the lights, as if someone just turned a dimmer switch and changed all the colours to white. Every single light on it faded to white on both triangles at exactly the same time. This was like these things were on rails, and they just went absolutely smoothly and perfectly exactly where they wanted to go, and there was no kind of a clue that they were, it wasn't like they were using air to keep them up. They were just went exactly, just like magnets, they went exactly where they wanted to go, and there was no kind of buffeting or moving up and down. And while they were hovering, it was like they were sat there on a rod, because they just did not move at all. But after about 5 to 10 seconds, they started to move across the motorway at about walking pace. It was quite slow how fast they moved. And I think it may have taken another 10 seconds for them to cross the motorway. As they went across the motorway, they actually extended in length. So they started off as equilateral triangles, pretty much identical to the other 2 times when I'd seen them, which we'll get into later. But as they crossed the motorway, the front was actually getting longer as it was moving slightly faster than the back end. In other words, they were elongating as they were moving. So by the time they got to about halfway across, they were now longer triangles, more like an arrowhead sort of shape than a equilateral triangle shape. They also went transparent, like the heat haze on a hot road. If you're looking at a hot road and you see this kind of rippling effect, it was like that sort of rippling effect, or looking at water when it's rippling. I could tell that they were still there, but they were transparent, and this lasted about half a second. It literally was like someone just pressed a button and then pressed it again at that sort of speed, as if, right, turn on the invisibility, now turn it off again. So it was very quick, but it was quite distinct and quite obvious. And again, both of them did it at exactly the same time. So both triangles went ripply and then went solid again, and this was all as they were moving across the road. And now one of them heads up the motorway towards Ross-on-Wye. It seemed to accelerate, but it didn't shoot off at really high speed. They were going at walking pace, and then it just started to pick up speed as it went off into the distance. And the other one had turned its back to me, and it went away a little while, and then for 10-20 meters, and then turned right and followed the Wye Bridge straight over the river and headed over towards Wylesham. And interestingly, I've got some newspaper clippings. Other people saw the black triangles on that night, and one of them was a guy who lives in Wylesham. I spoke to him on the phone about it afterwards. But the first sighting of these triangles happened in late 2007, and I've got the exact date. I'm thinking it was around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
So, but yes, there are plenty out there for sure.
Yeah, I got it. No, I had no idea.
Yeah,
because then
no.
you start, I'm learning for the first time in my life, and I consider myself an educated person, that these phenomena are happening worldwide, and that other countries are much more open to these phenomena.
Yeah.
as one word that's used all the time is otherworldly. Okay. In any rate, very interesting. If people go on the Phoenix Lights Network website that's www.thephoenixlights.net, and go to the GAP page, GAP, Geospatial Animation Project, you will see a 12-year study of hundreds of reports. Not only were people seeing these orbs in different formations, but they were also seeing craft, massive craft, gliding about 30 miles an hour, right over their heads, rooftop level. Some people saw it take off at blink speed without even dispersing the air, totally silent. And other people saw these craft with gunmetal bottoms and windows. Some people saw beings at the windows actually split in two and shoot straight up. Other people saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it later. You know, people have asked me, do you think that's what happened in 95? Well, when the same formation was at the same location at a distance, and we were having the close sighting, I don't know. Yeah. Why would they be outside our bed? But no, that's the only thing I keep. It just doesn't make sense. But anyway, going back to the GAP page, just as an example, because there is so much mis and disinformation out there, Savi. The media just picked up on the 8 to 10 hour period because that's when most people were outside, looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet when they called in after they saw something strange to the news and so forth. So I get that. But the mass sighting itself actually started at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, daylight sightings. 5 o'clock hour, they were seen in New Mexico and reported by Native Americans. The 7 o'clock hour and beyond in California. The 10, 11 o'clock hour, there were 2 commercial airline pilots. It took one of them over 10 years to get in touch with me. She was so afraid to share with anybody. That from Phoenix to California, as they were approaching Las Vegas, one of these massive craft, and like I said, some of these craft were massive, like 2-3 miles wide at least, covered Las Vegas. Okay, and there's a little story to that. And the sightings continued at 3 a.m. the next morning.
This overview shows the ground paths of various unknown objects that traverse the skies over central Arizona in various locations throughout Phoenix between 8 and 9 o'clock p.m. on March 13, 1997. The object seen by the greatest number of witnesses over the longest period of time was described as a large V-shaped craft similar in shape to a carpenter's square, with wings swept back at a 60-degree angle and squared off ends. There were 5 large lights equally spaced underneath the object, and a dome-shaped canopy on top. Tim Lee, a witness living near the Squaw Peak area, created this color illustration that was later featured on the cover of USA Today. Many witnesses described a similar object over 7th Avenue and Indian School Road, then watched it vanish as several fighter jets from Luke Air Force Base approached. After the jets passed, the object reappeared again, then proceeded toward South Mountain. This second craft did not have a dome on top and was observed at a higher altitude. Other witnesses reported seeing a boomerang or V-shaped object with a 120-degree sweep and pointed tips flying over Lake Pleasant and the west side of Phoenix at a high altitude. Airline pilots reported that the object was well above their 18,000-foot altitude. Underneath the object were 6 sets of lights and 3 lights in each set. Another mile-wide V-shaped object with a 90-degree sweep was seen descending towards the approach end of Sky Harbor Airport at an altitude of approximately 1,500 feet. A witness who observed the object less than 300 feet away reported that as it floated by in front of the moon, it appeared to be semi-transparent. There were 4 reddish-amber lights along the leading edges and a red orb trailing behind the object. A 5th object was described by witnesses as a mile-wide black triangle. Some witnesses reported seeing lights and windows, and others did not. This massive black triangle was first observed near Scottsdale and Pima Road, traveling west. Then the object turned south along Interstate 51 and flew over Squaw Peak. It is believed that this particular object was the one former Arizona Governor Fife Symington reported seeing as it traveled south toward Sky Harbor Airport. Another equilateral triangle, estimated to be around 2,500 feet long, had 3 white lights, 1 on each of the tips and 1 red light in the center. Witnesses first observed this triangular craft just north of the Beeline Highway, traveling southeast across Mesa, and was last seen near the intersection of Riggs Road and Power Road in Chandler. The craft then appeared to split into 2 identical copies that traveled away from each other in 2 different directions. Witnesses along Interstate 10 also reported seeing a mile-long black triangle traveling north from Casa Grande to Phoenix. The craft had 3 lights on the nose and 1 on each tip. It is not clear whether or not this particular craft is the same object that flew over Squaw Peak. There were also reports of an enormous white luminescent oval craft, estimated to be a mile long by 3/4 of a mile wide, with amber lights around its perimeter. The object was last seen hovering just above the ridge of the McDowell Mountain Range, northeast of Phoenix.
This is a forensic recreation of the Sky Harbor Triangle that was first reported near Carefree around 8:15 and was last reported near Sky Harbor at 8:40 p.m. The path of the craft has been pieced together by combining reports of similar objects. We begin with a view from the intersection of Lone Pine and Scottsdale Roads, 2 miles away from the craft as it hovers 1,000 meters over Lone Pine and Pima. The craft, depicted as 2 miles wingtip to wingtip, proceeds east down Lone Pine Road. The view moves to the intersection of Jomax and Tatum Roads, 3 miles south of the next sighting at 8:26 p.m. at the intersection of Lone Pine and Cave Creek Road. At this point, the object began a heading change and turned to the south. At 8:28 p.m., a report from a material site on the East Cave Creek Road put the craft halfway through the turn. This view is to the west from a point above Jomax and Tatum, roughly 3 miles from the center of the craft. At 8:30 p.m., Max and Shala Saracen reported the craft near Crave Creek and Pinnacle Peak roads. This report included UFO occupants seen in the windows of a triangle which they described as at least 2 miles wide. At 8:35 p.m., the craft was observed from the intersection of North 32nd Street and East Shea Boulevard, proceeding south towards Squaw Peak, where it was last seen entering the Phoenix Metropolitan Valley. At 8:37 p.m., the craft was observed by Terry Mansfield and members of her hospice group on the south side of Squaw Peak. The next vantage point is the first publicly shown recreation of what then Governor Fife Symington would have seen as the object flew over Squaw Peak. At 8:40 p.m., the craft was reported from 36th Street in East Washington, where it hovered short of the northern edge of the airport perimeter. The final view is a recreation of what the tower crew would have seen had they been looking due north. Some reports have this craft departing directly vertically, a truly astounding conclusion to a truly astounding series of observations.
There was a call. We have a recording, very professional, very detailed, from an alleged crewman from Luke Air Force Base that called the National UFO Reporting Center, Peter Davenport, and he recorded it, saying that craft were sent out from Luke Air Force Base at 8:30 that evening to intercept and get gun camera film, which I haven't seen, but I heard that they did get it, of one of these craft that was hovering right over central Phoenix. And as they got close, as their jets got close from Luke Air Force Base, the lights dimmed, and then the entire craft, UFO, UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena, blinked out and disappeared. freaking out one of the pilots that he said he helped out of his aircraft because he was so shaken up by it. And then Luke went on lockdown. Now, what's really interesting is that there were civilians, and one of them is in the documentary, who saw these jets take off from Luke with afterburners at 8:30, and others that saw as Luke Air Force jets left the scene, the UFO reappeared and then slowly glided over the airport and then over South Mountain. Okay. So, I mean, we do have civilians that saw that as well.
But
now,
yeah, sorry, just to interrupt again.
Picture,
sorry. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but again, there are many other UFO sightings when they send up jets to try to, to intersect or even just, I guess, just to try to communicate with the pilots, whoever they are, like,
or whatever, get gun camera film. I heard that they did get gun camera film.
Yeah,
of it.
But most times,
anyway, yeah.
Usually after the UFOs just either just disappear, like really fast, or just blink out.
Take off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, we're talking about, and I'm sure you can appreciate, Savi, technology that we haven't seen in 30 years. Okay. Where is this technology? Who has this technology? Anyway.
Yeah.
This picture, and I'm going to show you some of the craft because, as I said, 2 or more people had to see the same craft to be in the study. There were 10 different craft. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph and look different, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And that's what was concluded, because again, it wasn't just 1 or 2 events, it was many events. And the last report I have personally from a head of a crew, a Boeing crew, coming into the airport at 5:20 the next morning, one of these craft, massive craft, was hovering right over their tarmac. Okay. So we're talking over a dozen hours, at least 4 states. And I'm doing a study, which I'll get to, because I want to really define and get the data credibly and scientifically documented. There was a parade. Okay, this is just 1 hour. This picture right here is 1 hour. And this is how many things were going on. Now, here's a different craft that people saw. Okay, this was seen for the longest time. And this is just a sampling of the 10 different craft. I don't have them all here, but I'm going to run through this quickly. Now, this one really got to me. I did not see this until this was done and illustrated. But if you can see, every light is 3 lights. A month before our mass sighting in St. Petersburg, Russia, there was a mass sighting there. And not only was it over the tarmac, and there were air traffic controllers that talked about it in one of the TV shows here, but there were civilians that got video of it. And you can see that each light is 3 lights. Well, this was what people described here. Okay. And there was another sighting very similar a month before, February 19th, 97, over St. Petersburg, Russia.
Yuri Arzamatsev, a young economics student, was one of those who managed to photograph the lights in the sky.
I went into the kitchen and saw orange-colored lights and thought it was a UFO. Why a UFO? Well, when I was a child, I was interested in UFOs and cut articles out of the newspapers. I remembered how I used to follow the subject, and it immediately occurred to me that this was an unidentified flying object. One reason was that the lights appeared to be quite high in the sky. It was dark, and the lights were clearly visible above the line of the horizon, and higher up there were some very bright lights which had not been there before. I thought it must be a UFO, and that I should get my camera and try to film it.
The Arzamatsev family had all witnessed the lights, but like everyone else in the city, they had no idea what they might.
точка, еще одна, смотри, Серега, прям туда летит, а? О, она же была ближе. Блин, как близко. Смотри, в одну точку.
Here's another one. Now this one is a triangle that people saw with these orbs going out into the environment and then redocumenting it later. This is another one, a mile wide. And there were others, and then there were the pilot and his son actually reported a disc. Okay, now let me see if I can play this. Can you hear this?
No, the noise. Sorry, the
Okay,
sound.
I will send this to you
Yes,
because
please.
this is a video of what our former governor saw, which I'm going to get to in a second.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting. So I don't know if you want to show it, but I will send this to you.
Yes,
Hopefully it'll
of course.
play.
Yeah, I will put it into our interview.
Okay.
Love to.
But if people want to go to the Geospatial Animation Project, they can see the 10 different craft illustrated, plus there's videos. In fact, only a few years ago, a fella came forward from Prescott, which is like an hour and a half north of Phoenix. And he said that one of these craft, and he saw a boomerang craft covered Prescott, which is huge.
In January 2014, a witness to the overflight of an object in West Prescott contacted Dr. Lynne Kitei, Executive Director of the Phoenix Lights Network, and announced his willingness to come forward with his observations of the 1997 event. Kitei contacted Phoenix UFO examiner Larry Lowe and arranged for a meeting in which the witness recounted his observations in sufficient detail to allow forensic recreation of the event. During the interview, specific details were extracted, which were then used to provide forensic art direction to French UFO investigator and animator Laurent Chabin. Based on the recollection of the witness of the relationship of the lights to a characteristic mountain in the distant skyline, the size of the object was determined. Using several key points, a course for the object was determined. Unique to the observation were several details, including a pattern of faint lighting on the bottom of the object and 6 trailing artifacts the witness describes as exhaust plumes. The observation itself was brief and not continuous, as the witness had to move through his house from the back porch to the front porch as the object passed overhead. This report is valuable in that the object was first observed as an array of lights and later resolved to be a large dark object connecting them. The appearance of the object left an indelible impression on the witness.
There's no doubt in my mind at all that that was a spaceship that flew over my house.
What follows is a forensic animation of the details of the witness report based on the timing of key events.
I was sitting there watching TV, and for some reason, I glanced up, and I saw what I thought were stars behind Granite Mountain that were in a line, and I thought to myself, gosh, what constellation is that? And it just sort of went out of my head, and I started watching TV. I don't know how much time passed, maybe 2 minutes, something like that. And I looked up again, and they were much bigger and much closer, and then I realized that these aren't stars. This is something that I need to walk out on the back porch and look at. I saw that they obviously weren't stars, and they were, at that point, I would say they had just come over the top of Granite Mountain. I walked through the laundry room, walked out on the back porch, and looked up, and they just kept getting brighter and closer. They looked just like lights coming. I couldn't figure out what it was. They were different lights than any lights that I'd ever seen before. And then they just continued to get brighter and bigger and closer. I didn't even really know that they were lights. They were a light source. There was something about them that they weren't really like headlights on a car or landing lights on a jet plane at the airport or something. Like I've sat down there on 48th Street when I was a kid and watched the jets come into Sky Harbor, and the landing lights are on, and you're sitting there watching them, and those lights, they're real bright white. These lights were a little bit more yellow. It's like a yellow cast, but they had a depth to them, like they really had strength. I saw the curvature of the front of the ship, and I could see the light like in its well. The tree obscured it for half a second, and then I saw it real clearly straight overhead off to my right. Right as the ship was going over, the light passed off to my right. That's when I saw the bottom, the belly of the whole ship. There was like a light grid. It was almost dancing to a beat, dim light, almost shadows behind. I wouldn't say that it was intense, but it was definitely profound. To my perception, I thought it looked like it was cloaked in some way so that I couldn't see what was behind it. It was almost like a holographic projection, maybe a few feet away from the bottom of the ship that was in that light pattern, so that couldn't really look past that. After the light grid went over, that's when I got my first good look at the exhaust plumes on the back porch. That's when I really saw them the best from the side, where I really could see all the colors of the rainbow, shaped kind of like a flag or a pendant coming out the back of the craft. They were just really cool looking. They had impulses of light within the plumes that were individual impulses of light. There was like a fish scale effect, all going back with the exhaust. And it also was weaving behind there like a snake. It was like a 3D, all happening at once. Then when I walked through the house, went out on the front porch, got another really good look at the exhaust plumes, and then I could look up and I could see how many stars were just completely gone from the sky, and I realized that this thing was just about the size of downtown Prescott. I'm about a mile from downtown Prescott. Just covered up everything. Once I realized how large it was, it just faded off into the night just quite quickly. I wanted it to last longer. I wanted to see more of it. It just went away.
Okay. Now, it was really interesting, and I'm only going to hit on the very highlights. Like I said, there's so much mis and disinformation out there. I'm going to hit on the very highlights of what happened after the mass sighting. Because again, between 10 to 20,000 people who were purposely outside looking up at the sky, the Hale-Bopp comet, saw these phenomena, okay? There was no investigation. There was no explanation by the military or government. It was uncanny. I mean, come on. There's a public safety issue. This is rooftop level. Some people said these objects were so close they could have thrown a rock at it or a tennis ball and hit it, okay? Until May. And mind you, mass sighting was March 13th, 1997. Now we're talking May. Because she got so many calls, Councilwoman, she was vice mayor of Phoenix at the time, Frances Barwood, asked innocently. She got over 1,000 calls. I think she got back to like 700 people that were asking her, this was right over our head. Why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? And at the time, again, there was so much ridicule, so much snickering. I mean, even the news people, I mean, you know, they would do a credible report and then afterwards they would all giggle because they were nervous themselves or whatever reason they would giggle. I was so happy to stay anonymous for 7 years, just collecting, doing my homework, trying to find a logical explanation, which I have yet to find. Okay. But in the meantime, she asked innocently, she didn't see it, but asked for an investigation. She was plastered with ridicule. They made funny, you know, cartoons in the newspaper and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's either military, it's a hoax, or it's unknown.
Former Phoenix City Councilwoman Frances Emma Barwood is the only city official to look for answers, and she has paid a price for it. When Barwood proposed to her colleagues that they at least ask some questions, she was met with a stony, chilling silence.
Kind of curious, especially since people are starting to ask more questions. Thanks. Thank you. Councilman Siebert. After the meeting was over, one of the deputy city managers came over to me and said, you shouldn't have asked that question. And I said, why? And he said, well, you just opened Pandora's box. They didn't want to deal with it.
Barwood was shunned, ridiculed, poked fun at in political cartoons. The Air Force told UPN News 13 it no longer investigates UFOs since Project Blue Book was closed in 1969. Barwood sent letters to senators looking for answers and was told the same thing.
They do not do investigations on UFOs. Now, what is interesting to me is in these days of terrorism, we don't have anybody investigating anything that invades our airspace. It's top secret. Why be obvious? Second thing would be a hoax. In 1987, I got a call from a man who said he lived in Phoenix. He was a disabled veteran, and he told me his hobbies included listening to the CB and taking videos, and that he had professional equipment to do that. And he said his name was Richard Curtis, and he was listening to the truckers along I-17 going south, and they were talking about this huge object that was traveling south. And from what he said, I mean, the chatter back and forth was, oh my God. And so he decided he was going to go up on his roof and take some video, which he did. And he, let's see, I lost my place here. He said he got some really good pictures, and he wanted me to see it. And I didn't know where he lived because he didn't tell me, and I didn't really, he was so excited, I really didn't want to push him on much of anything. So I told him, you know, could you make a copy and send me a copy? And he called me at home, which is one of the reasons that I never had my phone number unlisted, because you never know, right? And so he said he would do that and send it to me. So I didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks. And he called me at home again, and he asked what I thought of the video. I said I never got it. And when did he send it? He said he didn't, but was going to get copies made. He was on the way to get copies made and bring it to City Hall when two men turned up at his door. And they said that they came for the videos for Barwood. He asked them, are you from her office? And they said, yes. And I said to him, well, I don't have any men in my office. I just had 3 women. So he got really upset, and he said they came to his door. And I didn't even know where he lived. So he said that they told him they were going to bring back his original because he hadn't made the copies yet. Now, I had been having my phone calls, all my phone calls taped because of the threats that I had gotten. And whenever a call was getting, you know, interesting, I would just push a button. Well, his call was interesting, so I recorded it. And I took the tape down to Jim Delatoso, and actually Jim Delatoso is one of the first people I met that knew about everything that was going on everywhere. And I felt like a, you know, total dummy because I knew none of this. And so we sat around the table and listened to this tape, and there was the first phone call that I taped, and then the second one. And in the second call, he told where he lived, which was the Westwood Ho, which is a hotel that was converted to people for disabilities and disabled veterans. And it was only a few blocks from City Hall, so, you know, he was close. Mike Tanner went to check him out. And what was interesting was that Richard did live at the Westwood Ho. He was a disabled veteran. He did have professional CB and video equipment. And then it got more interesting. The manager of the hotel saw a black car pull up, and 2 men in 3-piece black suits got out, and both were wearing hats and sunglasses. This is July. It was 110 degrees. And he thought, wow, they're dressed for winter. And they went into the hotel, and he said they looked identical. And then the next person who saw him was the minister who counseled with the residents at the hotel. And they asked him where Richard Curtis's apartment was and went up. Neither of them remember them coming down or leaving, but the car was gone. Now, Richard did appear on several TV shows, and he was interviewed, and that's his story. It was real interesting. He was a very nice guy. The last I heard, they changed his medication, and he had a bad reaction, and he was taken away, and nobody knows where he is now. And you know, and I started thinking, this is some more stuff that is, to me, it's unexplainable. But from what he said, his video showed an outline of the craft because the city lights reflected up. And he said too, it was murky, but he could see the outline, and he could see the whole shape. I mean, everything was on those videos. And I have no doubt that he was telling the truth. About that time, I called the telephone company because I was having a lot of clicking on my phone, like somebody was picking up an extension. And I thought, you know, my phone line was having problems, and so we called the telephone company, and a man came, and he checked inside, and then he went outside and he checked along the line. And when he came back, he would not come in the house. And he went to the window and he said, I want to tell you that there is a tap on your line, but it's not local. It's in the central office, which means it's government. And you didn't hear that from me. And he did not want to come in the house at all, and he left. So I was thinking, why? What was there about this unknown object that got that type of attention? Also, the tape of his calls to me disappeared from Village Labs. So it's all gone other than our memories.
Then, June 18th, 1997, suddenly there was a front page article on the front page and a multi-page article inside. For the first time in USA Today, people were hearing about our sighting outside of Arizona, okay, because they really kept a lid on it. And we didn't have social media at the time, but overnight it went viral. Every morning show, we have, you know, these morning shows, national morning shows. Peter Jennings, Dan Rather, people have heard of them, big news people. Everyone was covering the lights over Phoenix, okay, for the first time. And we were deluged by media from all over the world, who, once they talked to the witnesses, their stories were so heartfelt and so detailed that they too were asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? Suddenly, after nothing for months, we get an announcement the next morning, June 19th, 1997, that then Governor Fife Symington was calling an unscheduled press conference for that afternoon to divulge the lights over Phoenix, the culprit of the lights over Phoenix. And he comes marching out, one of his aides, with a giant alien head costume, making a mockery of the mass sighting, which, by the way, was not funny for the witnesses. There were parents in the audience, as well as press and so forth, and that saw something 2 and 3 malls wide with their kids, and he's making a joke out of it. And he said, "Oh, people were panicked." No. Very important to stress that there has not been not one credible report of harm, threat, abduction, or missing person, as some movie did, connected with the Phoenix Lights anomalies, aerial phenomena. If anything, it was just the opposite. And that's why I'm doing my study. People were in awe and in wonder, curious. Many cars pulled over to watch this. If anything, I have people still telling me that they feel blessed almost 30 years later that they had the sighting of the Phoenix Lights, okay? And he's making a mockery of it and saying that he wanted to allay the panic. Well, I'm sure after the USA Today article came out, okay, the military and government were panicked, okay, because now it was out of the bag.
Everybody in town shows up, pens, pads, TV cameras, tape recorders for the radio people, all at the ready, and it turned out to be a joke at the media's expense. Today article this week sparking national interest in the mid-March sightings of bright lights over Phoenix. The media took very seriously an invitation to a 5 p.m. news conference, at which it was promised Governor Symington would announce an investigation into the phenomena by the state's lone investigative agency, the DPS. When the news conference began, Symington announced a break in the case, an arrest. Here's what happened next.
Don't get him too close to me, please. It's, you know. This just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
The man behind the mask, Symington Chief of Staff, Jay Hyler. I'm guessing it was not an accident that you chose today to pull this little stunt.
No, and this is also the Roswell anniversary. There's been a lot of media coverage about that we were talking about. That's a very serious matter, by the way. We're not trying to trivialize that, and we'd like to have a genuine investigation completed so that the mysteries can be cleared up. But that doesn't mean we couldn't have a good laugh along the way.
But reportedly, some people are not laughing. The 3 TV switchboard has reportedly logged about 60 phone calls from viewers in the first half hour after that news conference. People who say fun is fun, but they're concerned about the use of taxpayer dollars for a practical joke. And a source tells 3 TV that only a few people within the DPS knew that this was a gag.
Okay. Now.
But he did, later on, he did actually...
Wait a minute. We'll get to it.
All right, okay.
We'll get to it. No spoilers here.
Yeah.
But before that happened, okay. After this press conference, I mean, this wasn't a joke for me either. I saw these up close and personal, okay, and he's making a joke out of it. I called every military base, try to get as high up as I could. I have some of the conversations in my book that are quite comical because they were just as curious as I was. And I never gave them details. Details, but they wanted to meet with me because they, you know, I did mention that I took pictures, right? They wanted to see them. And I said, no, no, thank you. And a month later, people don't know this. Even ufologists don't know this unless they study my data. I get a call, and this is very poignant, from one of the heads of the Air National Guard. And she says, oh, Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March. And I was thrilled. I was looking for any logical explanation. She says, do you believe that in all these months, no one ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard, and the Maryland Air National Guard was sending off military illumination flares in Operation Snowbird? Now, in Arizona, we have people coming from all over the world, actually, during the winter. We call them snowbirds. But if you look further, in military terms, the phrase snowbirds means diversionary tactical maneuvers. Okay. So they may have been sending off flares to divert attention away from the true unknowns. But I have not one person that has described, that I've met in almost 30 years, that describes anything like flares. So I said to her, wait a minute, when was the Maryland Air National Guard in town? She said March 1st to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She said, no. I said, are you sure? She said, absolutely not. I said, well, my husband and I witnessed and photographed the same exact phenomena over the same exact location 2 months before the mass sighting, confirmed the next morning in January, and the morning after the mass sighting by air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport as being over Class B restricted airspace at 1,000 feet altitude. And she says, you never told me that, because I never described what I saw. I said, plus, and I studied everything logical, including military illumination flares, that drop from aircraft on a parachute, drift haphazardly, slowly, down to the ground, have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself, and illuminate the area around it. That's what they're used for, so that heat-seeking missiles will go to the flare instead of the aircraft. Okay, not one person described that, but I said to her, and you're telling me that flares that cannot keep information traverse the entire state of Arizona in a rock-solid, equidistantly spaced, mile-wide V for hours? And she says, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. I'm still waiting. It's 30 years. Anyway, just so we can close the door on this. The top line there are the unknowns, the true unknowns. And this picture in the middle, I took 1 month after 9/11. There's a story to that people can read in the book, but a very poignant story. But I would love somebody to tell me what that is. Okay. On the bottom here are what flares look like. I mean, they're sent out haphazardly. They're on parachutes. They have huge smoke trails. I mean, nothing like the true unknowns. So this is the only explanation that they ever came up with. They never, to this day, have addressed the craft that thousands of people saw right above their heads. Now, fast forward 3 years. Former Vice Mayor of Phoenix, Frances Barwood, is now running for Secretary of State on a platform to get answers for the mass sighting, for the Phoenix lights, and brilliantly asking for a reenactment. Now, I mean, I'm a show me person, Sabi. I'm open. I'm a healthy skeptic. If it was military, okay, show me. Okay. Yeah. Right before the 3rd anniversary, giant announcement that 3 Air National Guards were coming into Phoenix to show everyone the Phoenix lights, and we were ready. And if you go on to the Phoenix Lights Network, www.thephoenixlights.net website, on the news page, and scroll down about halfway through or a little more, you'll see a block that says AZ Family. That was the CNN affiliate at the time.
Thank you, April. Well, it has been 26 years since the famous and still unexplained Phoenix lights. The phenomenon is hailed worldwide as the most witnessed and documented abnormal aerial sighting in modern-day history.
I feel like I'm the only one that didn't see it that day. Everybody talks about it. A new documentary about it's headed to Valley Theater on Sunday. It's part of an annual event to keep the memory alive. So Christiana's getting a preview at Harkins Theaters over in Scottsdale. So I know this is probably, you weren't around then, but it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, but I'm a huge history nerd anyways, and you brought up a good point. With our younger generations, I think this is so important because this is something you should know, a part of Arizona's history. And we're going to bring in one of the key witnesses. She is really the lady of the hour, the lady of our decades. I mean, you caught this photo right behind you. You've written books about this sighting, and there was an award-winning documentary made about it. Talk to me a little bit about it for people my age that may not have known what was going on. What were these 3 lights?
On March 13th, 1997, today, 26 years ago, when thousands of people were outside looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet, they also got a glimpse of 1 to 8 mile wide, either formations of lights, according to Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center, or actual craft. There is so much mis and disinformation out there. It wasn't just 1 or 2 events. It was many events for many hours, over a dozen hours, starting at 3 p.m. in the afternoon with daylight sightings here in Arizona, 5 o'clock hour in New Mexico, Native Americans were reporting it, 7 o'clock hour in California, 11 o'clock hour, there were 2 commercial airline pilots that reported a massive craft, an actual craft with gunmetal bottoms, etc., covering Las Vegas. And the sightings continued until 5:30 the next morning when a Boeing crew was coming into Sky Harbor and one of these massive craft was right over their tarmac. There is so much more to this story, and as it's unfolded, It's evolved. The story has evolved, and more credible people, including our former governor, who mocked the sighting in '97.
Our photographer remembers that.
Yes.
He was there that day.
Yes, came forward after the 10th anniversary to bravely divulge that he actually saw one of these craft. And in his own words, he was an awarded military pilot. Definitely wasn't flares, the only explanation they ever came up with, and they even tried to reenact it in 2000, 3 Air National Guards, and it was talk about a joke. It was a dire failure for them. It's never been recreated or explained. And we have other credible witnesses. In fact, there was a pilot that I was told by air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor that actually was coming into Sky Harbor very close on approach and called in to report this V-shape, a massive V-shape of lights, and it turned out to be none other than actor Kurt Russell. He came forward in 2017. So the more credible people that come forward, the more credibility it lends, and that's why I came forward.
But you said you waited 7 years. How come you feel people, I mean, it affects so many people because it's this fascinating idea that we aren't alone, that this is a huge world, universe, galaxy. So how come it took you so long, and why is it so important that people continue to come forward?
It was very precarious to come forward in '97 because there was so much ridicule and snickering and so forth. And as a medical doctor, I just wanted to do my homework. I didn't know anything about this topic at all, and actually pushed my medical career aside for 7 years and collected as much data as I could as a scientist to be pragmatic with the data. Ended up with a 750-page journal that ultimately, because I'm also an educator of vital health issues for over 50 years, squeezed the best of what I found into the first edition of the book, and now it's in its 4th edition as the story continues to evolve. And I'm sure we have a lot more in store now that the military and the government have come forward to acknowledge and disclose that it's real, that they've been studying these things, that phenomena, UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena, have been gracing our skies for centuries, actually.
And this is all stuff that you are going to continue to talk about this weekend as we celebrate 26 years since this mass sighting. I'm going to send it back to you guys in studio. Scott, Olivia.
They were out there as well as other reporters, and they got video of what they tried to do. They tried to make a triangle. It was upside down. It fell apart immediately. Had huge smoke trails, just what flares do. Okay, to date, the Phoenix lights have never been recreated or explained, but they continue to appear worldwide.
3 years after the 1997 sighting, the Arizona Air National Guard staged this demonstration, saying the lights were military flares.
We all got calls asking where our aircraft were that night, and we all checked, and none of our aircraft were in that area. But as we looked onward a couple months later, we found out we had visiting aircraft.
But the demonstration didn't settle the debate.
And I have to say that it just didn't make it. For anyone that had seen the true mass sighting, it was a joke.
Flares like these put off smoke, and witnesses say there was no smoke associated with what they saw. So now, more than a decade later, the lights remain a mystery, but one that Kitei says deserves a closer look.
So the data speaks for itself. I just urge people to look at the data, and that's one of the main reasons I came forward. If I can be a credible voice so that people actually look at the data, then I've done my job.
Now, as you mentioned, right after the 10th anniversary, and again, there is so much to this story. I'm just giving the tippy tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
But 10 years after the mass sighting, for whatever reason, former Governor Symington came forward to disclose publicly that he actually witnessed one of these mile-wide craft. And as an awarded military pilot, he said not only was it definitely not flares, he saw a craft, but in his own words, and again, this is a word that's used worldwide by countries much more open and studying these phenomena, otherworldly. Otherworldly.
This is one of your constituents, and she has a very quick question she wanted me to pose. Do you mind?
Fire away.
Here we go.
Fire away.
Stacey, can you say really quickly what you saw?
Yes, on the evening of March 13th, I was driving towards Phoenix near the Sackton exit, and I saw 3 lights at the very beginning, followed by 2 on each edge of a massive triangle come off the Sackton Mountains at about 2,500 feet, proceeded to come straight in front of us over I-10 and over my car. The size of this object was large enough that if I were to have opened a newspaper and laid on my back, I still would not have been able to block out the entire object. It was a massive black object traveling very slow without any noise over I-10 on the evening of March 13th, right around 8:30. Is this still a matter of ridicule to him after he came out on TV with his alien, making us all look a little foolish? We've all remained unwavering on our descriptions. A lot of evidence has been provided since then, and I'm wondering if he still feels this is a matter of ridicule or if he has taken a new stance on this.
Excellent. Well, Stacy, thank you.
Well, that's a good question. And of course, as I said earlier, I never felt that the overall situation was a matter of ridicule. We certainly took advantage of it, no question about that. But no, I don't consider it a matter of ridicule at all. I think it was a very, I think it was a legitimate occurrence of unknown origin craft of some sort, and who knows where it came from, inexplicable, and probably one of the major sightings in modern history in the country, because a lot of people saw it in Maricopa County, and I saw it too. So I used to work, when I was first in the Air Force, I worked at Luke in the Sage Center there in NORAD. And so something like that would go up the chain of command immediately to NORAD in Colorado and then go to the Pentagon. So certainly the military chain of command knew exactly what was going on. Now, whether they immediately transmitted it to the White House or not, I don't know, but certainly it went up the chain immediately and does in the Pentagon to the Joint Chiefs, to whoever's on duty. So they must have a record of it, but whether the president was informed, I don't know. I imagine if the vehicle had landed, that the president would have he would have been notified and activated and
taking a ride.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'd hitch a ride. So it's hard to know what really happened. But it's been sort of a stone wall on the military side. And my Department of Public Safety looked into it too, and they didn't get any answers. So.
Okay, well, the last thing I guess I would ask you one more time, if you wouldn't mind, if you could be on television for world television for 15 seconds to describe what took place, what would you say?
I would say that at that time in over Phoenix, we all experienced a very exciting sighting of some kind of a craft of unknown origin. Nobody's ever been able to explain it, and that it was, most of us feel that it was definitely, of alien origin, enormous, inexplicable, and it was really a thrilling event. I know it made a lot of converts, and the lady that asked that question, I mean, she saw it come over, I think, the Sackton Mountains is what she was saying, and and you can tell the earnestness in her voice, how earnest she was, that it was she really had quite an experience. So I guess we're part of the UFO trail. We we kind of fit the pattern here, and I think that's wonderful.
Were you at all surprised? I mean, being governor of the state, where this is all going on, were you surprised at how little information you were able to get out of them?
Yes, yeah, I really was. Yeah, I mean, we really did make a bunch of calls, and I talked to the general at the National Guard, and I talked to the guy at the command. I wish I could remember the name of the commanding officer at Luke Air Force Base at the time. We called the Pentagon, or the general from my guard called the Pentagon. I mean, I saw it, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting, and let's try to get to the bottom of it. So.
Did the guy at the Pentagon, when you spoke with the general at the Pentagon, did he know about this already, or was it?
Well, the general in charge of our guard, I believe, talked to the Pentagon, his person at the Pentagon, and I think that they knew that there had been sightings, as I remember it. but they weren't talking about it.
Whose idea was it to come out and say, hey guys, it was military flare activity? Whose idea was that?
You know, I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that came from. But you know, that was total bunk. Those I've seen high altitude flares before. I mean, that wasn't, they weren't flares. I mean, you had consistent positions of light. You had same intensities. It moved the same way. I mean, no flares had the ability to move and hold their position in the sky and then move and hold their position in the sky the way those that you just can't. So they weren't flares.
If you had to describe what happened in a paragraph while you were governor on the evening of March 1997, succinctly, what would you say?
I would say that there was a very mysterious event that happened over, not just over Phoenix, but over Maricopa County. Something we'd never seen before, exceptionally bright lights up in the sky that didn't conform to anything that we had ever known before. And it has never been explained. And when I was in office, I tried to get explanations. Nobody had an explanation. People just sort of said, well, we just don't know what it is. But it was it moved, it stayed, the lights were all symmetrically positioned, and it moved, and I'd say that we probably had our first major encounter with the unknown over Maricopa County at that time. It was really thrilling. I mean, but I was never fearful about it. I figure if they're smart enough and capable enough to to come into our airspace with the technology that they have, if they wanted to do us in, they could have done us in a long time ago. So I'm not fearful of this at all.
March 13th, 1997. This event called Lights Over Phoenix. What did you see?
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. No, I'm serious now. That it was unquestionably it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
Right. Doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, and a pilot. Got a lot of hours flying, so it was pretty breathtaking. And I'll never forget, I snuck out to see it, without DPS, which I'm not supposed to be driving my own car and that kind of thing. And so, but I told Ann what I was doing. I was going to go up to Squaw Peak and see what everybody was, clamoring about. And when I walked in the front door, she looked at me, and I was apparently normally I'm fair-complected and pale anyway, right? And she said, oh my gosh, she said, she looked like a ghost. What did you see? And I said, well, I don't know what I saw, but it was really something, and I'm not going to talk about it. And
wow.
So,
did it frighten you?
No, I think I was kind of in awe, really,
How big?
Bigger than anything I've ever seen in the sky.
Like an aircraft carrier in the sky?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And it was hard to define because of the light in terms of the size, but it was absolutely silent and had sort of eerie embedded lights, and so that's what I saw, and I wasn't expecting to see anything because I was looking out over at Luke to the west, and then all of a sudden, these people in the park area just on the west side of 51, there were a bunch of people there. Everybody said, oh, look at that. And we turned around, and this thing was coming from the northwest, traveling to the southeast.
We now know, and it really hit me when we were watching the Diamondbacks in Game 7, and the B-1 flew over.
Mm-hmm.
Over the bomb.
It wasn't a B-1 bomber.
But that thing all of a sudden out of nowhere appears. And, I said to somebody that night, I said, well, when they do test these, they test them in populated areas. They're new stuff. They test it to see if people detect it. Do you believe it was ours? Do you believe it was something from the U.S. government that they were kind of flying around?
No, it wasn't even close to a B. It was much bigger than a B-1. A B-1 actually isn't that big. I mean,
right.
I mean, if it's at low altitude, it'll appear big, but no, this was totally different.
Something, though, that you think our own government may have been kind of running by a populated area to see what would happen?
Well, they certainly achieved their goal of stirring the pot, if that's what they were doing. But I don't think so. I think this was technologically far advanced. I use the analogy. Can you imagine if you took Christopher Columbus and put him in the cockpit of a Boeing 777? What his reaction would be? He wouldn't understand it. He would be convinced that this is something from another world, you know.
Is that what?
And I think I really believe that. I believe that. But I've always been open to that. You know, we're not alone in the universe.
I agree with you.
We're going to find that out one way or the other. Even Bill Clinton was talking about that the other day on the national news.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I do believe that we're not alone. I just don't know that we've been visited. But you think maybe that night we were?
I think so, yeah. There have been so many different sort of sightings and inexplicable phenomena that, you know, but the disparity in terms of technological progress would be so vast that we would be, I think, of sort of no consequence to whoever is visiting us, because the technology to get here would be just beyond anything we could imagine.
Did it hover?
No, it was just going in a straight line.
Slow pace?
Yeah, slow pace, yeah. And then, you know, there were all the sightings.
Flares.
There were the sightings of the America West plane coming into Sky Harbor, said he could have landed on it.
It was enormous.
Yeah.
Like an aircraft carrier in the sky? Is that about as close as you could?
I think that's a fair description,
oh
yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Okay. And that pilot came forward right after there was a big article in the New York Times about the Pentagon study, $22 million study that was funded by Harry Reid, one of the senators, to study the Pentagon's military study UFOs, UAP, they changed the name.
Yeah.
And that private pilot finally came forward, and it was none other than Kurt Russell, the actor, who waited, okay? He came forward in 2017. And there's a video also that's on the homepage, and I believe also on the news page. His interview, the UK interview, is really terrific. That was his first one, where he said that for 2 years, and this happened to other people too, he never talked about it. He was on approach, slow approach to Sky Harbor, very close, with his son, Oliver, his adopted son. And he was the one, and usually kids were the one, which is interesting, who saw the V coming towards them and alerted their parents, and he alerted Kurt. And he said, whoa, I better call the air traffic controllers, because he saw the V, and giant V of equidistant lights. And he was reporting it while I was filming it, which is kind of cool.
May be able to help me, and this may feature, who knows? Because this is an international story. Because of you both being here, I looked into the international files, not covered by our Ministry of Defense, but maybe covered by yours. This took place in Arizona. An unidentified pilot, according to the press cuttings, flying near an airport in Arizona with his son when he spotted 6 lights in the night sky. So he called from the aeroplane to air traffic control to say, I'm seeing these lights here. I wasn't expecting any other planes. They're none supposed to be on my landing path. Can you tell me what's going on? They said there are no other planes. He said, I'm seeing 6 bright lights coming towards me. Mystery unresolved.
Except, tail number for that plane was Bonanza 2 Tango Sierra, and I was the pilot. No way. Oliver and I.
Doesn't say that in the briefing.
Oliver and I.
Or I should have read to the end.
Oliver and I were flying in. I was flying him to go see his girlfriend, and we were on approach, and Oliver said to me, I was just looking at him, and I was coming in. We're maybe a half a mile out, and Oliver said, "Pa, what are those lights?" And I then it kind of like came out of my reverie, and I said, "I don't know what they are." I said, he said, "Are we okay here?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna call him," and I reported it. And they said, "We're not painting anything. We know." We landed. I taxied, dropped him off, took off, went back to L.A. Never said a word. He never said a word. I never thought of it. 2 years later, Goldie is watching a television show when I came home. And the show is on UFOs. But as I came home, hey honey, how's it going? Boom, and I'm kind of hearing this the TV going, and I stopped and I started watching, and it was on that event. Now that was the most viewed UFO event. Over 20,000 people saw that. And I'm watching this, and I'm feeling like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's like, why do I know this? You know what? And it's not clear to me. And finally, I said. Then they said the pilot reported it, a general aviation pilot reported it on landing. I'd never thought of it since then, and I said, that was me. That was me. And I said, wait a minute, I'll go to my logbooks. So I went to my logbooks, and there was the flight at that time, and I didn't mention anything about the UFO. The fascinating part of that to me is that it just went literally out of my head. And Oliver never mentioned it. And had I not seen that show, I'd have never thought of it again.
Amazing.
Now, that, to me, was the weird part.
Believer now, Chris?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm convinced.
It's just unidentified. It's just unidentified. It's flying, and it's
an object.
It's an object.
Yeah.
Right.
Moving towards you at this.
We need to move on.
Is really dear to my heart because 3 years ago, even though half of the book, interestingly, is about the Phoenix Lights and how the story unfolded in much more detail, but I started to interview witnesses. While I was anonymous, I was CEO of health education learning programs that produced the video and workbook curriculums on vital health issues. And when I would be visiting Village Labs, the press would say, who are you? And I was honest. I said, I'm from health education learning programs. I'm representing the couple that took the pictures of the Phoenix Lights. And then they would go on and interview somebody. In any case, I got to interview a number of witnesses. And not only were their stories heartfelt and detailed, but there were a number, and this is really important data too, that people don't know, had near-death experiences as children. Now, you read this in the book, right? That was reawakened by the mass sighting. And that really, got me because I did too. We don't have time today to go into it, but I just lay it all out there when I was 8 years old. And I am hitting octogenarian at this point. It was many moons ago in 1956. But I came back with knowledge that was way beyond my years. Plus, and I will share this little tidbit, I did see 3 giant beings above the earth in glowing white robes that had hoods over their heads. I tried to see their faces, couldn't see their faces, but I felt their unconditional love, and they knew who I was. They knew who I was. And I came back with very profound after effect. Okay? As did many people that had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting. And I thought, whoa, again, this isn't about me. It's about the data. And I thought, could there possibly be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body experience, unexplained aerial phenomena that have a mystical light associated with the experience? And lo and behold, when I started looking again, I started finding such credible data at university level. The Omega Project, it's like a 5-inch book. Dr. Kenneth Ring at Harvard, Dr. John Mack was just writing a book right before he was killed, unfortunately, in UK. My very first presentation was the month before I came forward in March 2004 at the Tucson Medical Center with Dr. John Mack. And my data, he was thrilled that I was sharing my data because my photographic data confirmed for him what he was studying at Harvard with people that had contact and abductions and so forth. It confirmed his data. Plus, he was writing a book as well on the connection between all unexplained phenomena. And not only, and I make it very simple in the book, not only is the experience very similar, as you saw, but the after effect, the awakening, the enlightenment, the connectedness that one feels when one has a true unexplained phenomena experience. I started calling them an UP, because it's a positive transformation and connectedness to the universe and to the earth and to each other. that may never have been felt before. But besides going into that in the book, a lot more, and there's a picture which you saw, I'm not going to divulge, but that brought it all together. It was taken 10 years after my mom passed. That, I mean, it's in the picture. She's there in the picture. I'm not going to ruin it, but the fact is that really brought it all together. Because if people knew that we do go on after we pass, maybe they would take stock in what they do, because they will go on for destiny forever. Okay, their destiny is forever, and what they do on Earth while they're here will affect them after they pass.
Correct.
Okay, we learn that over and over again from near-death experience studies.
Yes,
but certainly, hopefully, if people actually knew that, and that's why I'm sharing it, they would change their behavior because it will come back to us. It will come back to us. Anyway, I wanted to do a study, a real scientific study, and I joined forces with a PhD professor and one of the witnesses who I describe in the book, Dr. Brad Evans, who was coming up from Tucson with his family. His wife was driving. He was in the passenger seat. His daughter was in the back with a friend because they were going to a swim meet. It's about a 2-hour south up to Phoenix Drive. And one of the craft was right above their car for some time. And he said the wings just went on and on over the fields on both sides of this giant highway. And he really got a great look at it. And by the way, they didn't say anything to each other for 6 months, just like Kurt Russell didn't say anything until he walked in and he saw Goldie Hawn watching a show on TV about the Phoenix Lights. And they mentioned a pilot saw it, and he said, whoa, it's like a Richard Dreyfuss moment where he thought, that sounds strangely familiar. And he went up to his log and looked, and lo and behold, he was the pilot that, was reporting it. But nonetheless, Brad not only joined, they didn't talk about it for 6 months, and they saw something on TV, and it like opened up a floodgate. And his wife actually got telepathic messages. And I wanted to study all of this. And if anybody in Hungary or that's hearing this from you saw anything similar, these orbs or these massive craft in V shape or triangle shape or boomerang shape, if they want to join our effort to really look at the data, please go to the Phoenix Lights Network website, www.thephoenixlights.net, and on the landing page there's a triangle underneath. You can enter the website, and underneath that you can click on the questionnaire. And it's very simple. It's totally anonymous. We want people to be totally honest. And I wish I knew who some of these people were, because they wrote things in there, and I can't contact them, unfortunately. But the point is that this was 3 years ago. We started July 3 years ago, and we just presented it for peer review at the Society for Scientific Exploration. They were so enamored by our data that, which confirms everything that I've shared with you and more, okay, that we are now writing an abstract, and then we're going to start getting out into the public. But just so you know, I mean, we have unbelievable, and again, anybody that saw it, I hope that they'll our effort, because we really want to quantify in a scientific way, which we are, for the first time ever, a mass sighting data, what really happened and how it affected people in real time and long term. And in the book, again, there is much more to this story, as you know. And I hope people will pick up a copy. Amazon has it, the link. You probably have a different link from UK or whatever.
Yeah, I normally direct people to the German Amazon, so they don't need to pay. But it's the same. It's
whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's the same book.
Yes, yes.
But the fourth edition, the 2017 edition, after Kurt Russell came forward, I wrote another edition of the book, because I wrote one when the governor came forward, and then I wrote another one when Kurt Russell came forward, and more. There's more in there too. The ebook, I don't know if they make that available for you, but that does have color pictures and live links, because I'm an educator. I try to be as scientific as I could as a scientist. As a physician, I want people to know they're not alone. Okay, even though most anomalies can be explained, only a small percentage cannot. But just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. I always say we might be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency, whatever. But and as I also said, it's time we get this out in the open. And that's why I finally came forward. I went back to work at the Arizona Heart Institute, very prestigious, as the head of the Wellness and Imaging Center, the Heart Test. And behind closed doors, I pared down that 750-page journal to 350 pages, 230 pages, 230 pages of the most credible data. Every word is there for a reason. Okay, because some people say, oh, they go through it. No. Every word is there for a reason. And, and I hope people will take a look at it. And the ebook has color pictures and live links, because if people are interested in certain things, I'm an educator, as well as an experiencer. It's so important that anybody out there that does have an experience like this, even taking the questionnaire has helped people, because it's cathartic to get it out there, even to one person.
Yes.
And our documentary, which is streaming on Amazon now and several other entities, you can't get the DVD anymore. And I only make it available in the States, unfortunately, because it gets really expensive when you ship it out. But the documentary has won over a dozen international film festival awards. And we've also updated that. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who also is no longer with us, unfortunately, he's the sixth man to walk on the moon, was being conferred with. He was being conferred with while it was happening. Okay. And he's wonderful in the documentary. Have you seen that yet?
I have seen the documentary, but I was going to ask you about that. What is the latest one? Because I think I've seen the one.
The latest one is the 20th anniversary, right there, that has the award on it. The 20th anniversary.
So it's 2017.
Because we had also a 9-1. It was the 20th anniversary that we updated the last one in 2017. 2017.
Yeah. So I've only seen the 2024 edition, I think, or like the one before. I think it was 2000.
The one before.
14.
2005. Well, there was 2005, 2009, 10, and then the 2017.
Okay.
And, they're very similar, but we did add a few things. Plus, the first one did not have, the original did not have astronaut Edgar Mitchell or the 911 police operator who came up to me at a conference and said, the police said they didn't get any calls. Well, I was on that night. I'm retired now, and we got hundreds of calls. Okay.
Yeah.
And then also a pilot who saw right above him. I mean, he was looking into what he called a canister. So detailed and so, exciting to hear from the witnesses themselves. And then my latest adventure and endeavor, because I produce video workbook curriculums for vital health issues for the classroom worldwide. Discovery Education was distributing those. But I wanted to get something in the classroom, and it's very difficult to do that anymore. So I actually have a colored version and a black and white version also on Amazon, where I combined, after working on a curriculum for 7 years, I combined the best into a 160-page and 150-page graphic novel activities coloring book called The Adventures of UFO, Field Observer, and UFO, he's a little alien, worked with a Disney illustrator. We had, for 5 years, we had pilot programs. The teachers were working with their kids in 5th and 6th grade to get feedback. So, we have how the story unfolded with the Phoenix Lights, plus we have Sue, who gets really into it, and she goes to the History Museum, and we have, we talk about the Native American connection, as well as the Science Museum, and we talk about crop circles. We have 80 crop circles to color, as well as 10 different crafts to a map maker come to Phoenix and actually draw them to scale in here. The 10 different crafts, as well as activities. There's word finders and crossword puzzles and all for all ages, because I wanted everyone to be able to do this. I did the black and white, which is cheaper for people that want to get that one for teachers, so they can make copies and give it out in the classroom. And there's quite a few teachers that are using it in the classroom. The color one is really impressive, I have to say. But there are answers also in there for those of us who are challenged. And I always end up saying, keep looking up. And now your audience knows that it's a double entendre. Because not only do I say keep looking up, but the unexplained phenomena aspect of this is really, really important. So I hope people will check it out. I hope you learned a lot today from what I shared. And do you have any questions, Sabi?
Thank you very much. Let me have a look, because I did put some notes here. So yeah, government explanations. We talked about previous sightings. Oh yeah, how many countries has been translated? Like because you mentioned that you've been to Japan or with the Japanese.
That is a great question. That is a great question. I just did an interview for a Japanese very popular TV show, and they had a translator. It took about 4.5 hours to do an hour interview because we kept going back and forth. Unfortunately, to date, even though I've had requests in Italy and a number of other countries, I don't have nobody has ever translated the book into other languages. So I welcome people if anybody's interested. I have a publisher, and we could get that together if there is interest. It's Waterside Productions in California, and yeah, I would love. I mean, of course, I would love to translate it into different languages, because again, this is happening worldwide, and the Phoenix Lights have been around for centuries. Okay, not just decades. And there is so much to learn and so much more in the book that we didn't even touch on today. But I hope people will seek that out, and hopefully, I will be translating it. Maybe you'd be interested, Sabi. We could get together on that. That would be great. But at any rate, thank you for having me, and I hope everyone out there keeps looking up.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lynne. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Sziasztok, remélem tetszett az interjú. Ha így van, ne felejtsd el lájkolni a videót, feliratkozni a csatornára, és megosztani legalább egy ismerősöddel. Ezzel rengeteget segítesz a munkámban. Köszönöm, hogy végignézted, és további szép estét kívánok.